the Vox Pop thing was it was just to get the man on the street, just to try and get an idea of what people were thinking. And I was just so pissed off with everything that I thought, well, I don't know, perhaps I can do something there. Today, on episode 5 of Vox Pop, we speak to Dave, otherwise known as London Raider on Twitter. An interesting discussion. It actually went on for something like 4.5 hours. I've tried to edit it down, so it might be a bit clunky. We certainly enjoyed it, and you might hear the clink of glasses from time to time as we steadily got more and more lubricated. Anyway, over to episode 5 of Vox Pop. Today it's our, I think our 4th episode of Vox Pop, and we have Dave joining us. Dave, aka London Raider, on Twitter, who I have got to know really through probably bouncing off each other in the echo chamber that is Twitter sometimes. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be invited on.
Well, as you can see, it's... Sorry, go on.
I am the man on the street. I am the I can't remember what your tagline was, but there's like people of note and people who aren't, and it's good.
Ordinary and extraordinary. You could be extraordinary.
I've had an extraordinary life, despite being very, very ordinary. So, I'll take that.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad that you said that, because one of the things we both are or were regular listeners to the Gulfstream podcast, and we both comment and
great days.
Indeed.
Great days.
And we both used to sort of heckle from the cheap seats on that. And I did hear a little bit about your well, not enough, but I did hear a little bit about your background. Do you want to just talk us through what you dare in terms of who you are and what you've done in general terms, and we'll go from there.
Okay, yeah, I've mainly worked in the energy industry, but I think my passion was always music. I was raised by a very intelligent single parent mother, because my father left just around the time I was born to go and do Formula One. She then became a mature student, and I lived on Sussex campus from the age of 4 to 7 through the middle of the 70s, which is obviously quite an interesting time, and I do have memories of it. I then ended up in boarding school at the age of 7, and got into a very good public school in Oxford because I passed the 11 plus and got an assisted place, so it was all paid for by the government. Thank you, Mrs. Thatcher. And then went to Imperial and did maths. I'm just doing my CV here, really, aren't I? And got married very early on to a Croatian girl who'd come out of the war in Yugoslavia and needed someone to really just sort her life out for her, because she was an absolutely brilliant person, very intelligent, but completely screwed over by the war. So that kind of sidetracked me. And then I got into the energy industry and worked with some pretty big organizations setting up UK power trading on the prompts and scheduling power stations for 10 years. Then I went around the world for a couple of years and came back and did it again for an investment bank, and kind of drifted since then, really, because when you kind of hit the pinnacle of your industry and there's no space for you anymore, it's very difficult to readjust around the age of 40, 45. And now find myself in Somerset, which is absolutely glorious, and I'm very, very lucky. And I've travelled all over, as you have as well. And I've met purely by chance, never had any ambition, met all sorts of famous people and bumped into the odd royal. I lived in Chelsea for 15 years, so you tend to cross paths with unexpected people, and they're just people at the end of the day, out for a pint, as we are. And just absolutely devastated by what our governments around the world are now doing to us. And been very lucky to find such a good group of people on Twitter and on YouTube to be able to discuss these events and have a laugh doing it at the same time during these dark times, which some of the Gulf streams just had me absolutely roaring with laughter. But by the end of them, I mean, Simon Roberts, I'm sure you will have a listen to this at some point. You are an absolute hero, sir, and Hector too. And their talents are completely wasted on such a small channel, but that's the world we live in. And hopefully one day they will get the audience that they deserve. It's amazing how diverse the people on these discussions are. Someone like Michael Liversley is so completely different from who I am. And at first I wasn't sure about him, but and I listened to his chat with you. And we have and he's so well read, he's so well versed. He knows, the quotations of the, these philosophers, and this is stuff I do not know. I'm very much about feeling and understanding and logic. And these guys, they're so studied and so open to, some of them are lucky because, they work independently so they can be themselves. But yeah, it's been fascinating. That one was fascinating. And then Simon, his new one was, I don't know if you heard it. It was somewhat interrupted by a slightly controversial clash of egos, which is rather sad.
Well, I have a theory that, and it's probably actually rubbish, but I do. My experience of people that I would consider to be sort of centre right or to the right of things in the political sphere tend, in my experience, to be usually quite strong characters and pretty sure of themselves. Now, that might be complete tosh, but that does mean that you end up with a lot of you can end up with a lot of strong characters all rubbing against each other, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I also think there's an element of, as you say, a little bit of ego perhaps knocking around.
Yeah, and I don't want to turn this into yet another show discussing that same topic.
No, absolutely.
It's when people are not... people can be... You've got to realise when you're wrong sometimes. And that takes more of a man to do. And, I think most of us realise that we've got a lot of ideas and we're not really sure, but we're open to things. And that's where our divide is. And it seems on the left you can just have any odd ideas and they don't really care as long as it's not whatever we're doing. Whereas with us, things get a bit focused. It can be very, very focused and pointed. And when you start going down the rabbit hole, once you've gone down it, it's very hard to step back and try and bring people into it gently. Because you just want to go. An avalanche of stuff comes out of your mouth that people don't have any idea what you're talking about. And you've got to think about how do you step back and draw people in. And when people are exposed but haven't taken the first step and they see all the rest of it, they can't make that link.
Edges of he's been on.
Then they think that you're crazy, whereas you just go, you just haven't put it together.
Of what people
some
like
people
David
just,
Icke
I think some people just don't want to. They're too afraid of what we see, and they just don't want to know what's going on.
I think that's a really good point, and I do think that's the case. I think a lot of people. I'm probably the same as you. I look at it. I've said this to Michael when we spoke as well. Nobody wants to be. What I said to Michael was, I don't want to be. It's not that I desperately care what people think about me. Certainly not strangers. But at the same time, I don't want to come across as this complete lunatic.
Yeah. I
want people to take my thoughts and things seriously. And I think.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where it got to with the last London March, didn't it? Because I really wanted to go in and meet Simon and whoever else was there. I've met Lawrence Fox once before at one of his concerts, which I think actually saved my life, bizarrely. And I just wanted to. Oh goodness! I can't tell I had COVID, but it wasn't COVID. I don't know what the hell it was. Around the winter of 2019,
Right.
I'd not worked all summer on purpose because I was watching all the Ashes and the Cricket World Cup, and got to December and managed to get a couple of job interviews, and was so ill I could barely walk. I had the full dry cough for about 2 weeks. I was in bed for about 2 weeks. I had a rattling on my chest that kept me awake at night. It was so loud. And I put up with that for about 2 months, and it kind of came and went. But I couldn't walk to the shops and back without breaking out in tons of sweat and just being completely weak. And I was lying in bed just with no energy, ill, no job, thinking that I was done. I really thought I'd run my race, and I was thinking, okay, well, I've been all around the world. I've seen things that I never expected to see and do. I had a hell of a good time, and so be it. I don't have any family, don't have any kids, so there's nothing. I don't have to worry about any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And Lawrence Fox then did his thing on Question Time, and this is before I knew anything about Delling polls, Delling pods, any of these people, any of these ideas, even.
Right.
And just kind of very naive politically, not interested in it at all. And I thought, oh wow, this is interesting. Lawrence Fox, yeah, I grew up in Oxford. He was in Lewis. So what's going on? He seemed like a good guy. So I looked him up to see what the discussions were around it, and which is how I found the Delling pod, and I started listening to all the podcasts and was just blown away by Will Happer, the Princeton physicist, and Darren Grimes was one that really stood out because he just won his legal battles with whoever it was he was trying
with the
ruin his life.
Yeah,
the Electoral Commission. And I just went through all of them, and the one he did with his brother, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting. And I got the little badge, the little special friend badge. I thought, because and 160, and then I thought, I'll check out Lawrence's music, because he's he's trying to push his music, and I really enjoyed it. And I had no money, and I was so ill, and I thought, you know what, he's playing in Bristol. I'm going to get a ticket, and I'm going to go. And I'm going to, if I don't go, then I may end up dead in a month, because I'm just ill and it's all over. And I dragged myself up there, left the house, stopped, came back, threw up 3 times, got on the bus, middle of February, boiling hot, took everything except for a t-shirt off, all the windows open, people looking at me like I'm mad, sat outside the venue with a can of Coke and a packet of crisps, just trying to get some balance. Went in, and there was this tiny little venue, but there was 2 tables and one occupied by a nice looking couple. And I said, look, I'm just not feeling great. Do you mind if I sit with you? And spent the entire evening with them. And they bought me beer all night, refused to have a return drink, and texted me the next day to make sure I got home okay. And that experience, somehow some kind of cathartic process cleared out the last of whatever that virus had done. And I got a job interview within a week, and I was employed a week after that. And I genuinely think if I hadn't gone through that process, I probably wouldn't be here now. So yeah, and then after that, it was obviously just a snowball of information and podcasts and discovering all these new people, and it actually got me to really engage with Twitter, to be able to talk with them, because I've had 2 permanent bans already on Twitter.
That's pretty impressive. I mean, I'm amazed how many people have, actually. I'm new. I only joined October 20 or something like that, so not even a year ago.
It doesn't take much. I mean, like, what did I do? There was a picture of Gove, and I've had 2 bans already on this one. And I just said, what did I say? Lock, stock, hung, drawn, quartered. And I didn't even say anything else. It didn't say it was like towards him or Yeah, just the 5 words: lock, stock, hung, drawn, quartered, and yeah, 12
It
12 hour
depends.
ban for.
It depends, I think, as well on whether somebody reports you, because
Yeah, definitely.
um, I got banned probably about 2 weeks in. I replied to Starmer. He'd made some ridiculous comment about something. Yeah, I mean, he does them every
Well,
day
you
anyway.
I mean, that's the thing. If you go, if you're setting yourself up there because
Yeah. But you know how
they're gonna.
sometimes it just makes you, it's pathetic really, but it just makes you feel
Yeah,
better. All I said was, why don't you go take a long walk off a short pier? That's
yeah.
literally
I've done.
what I
Oh,
said.
yes.
And it said, right,
That's
threatening or encouraging suicide. So
yeah.
I got I think a 24 or 12-hour ban for that. Um, and then
I had something.
sorry, go on.
Yeah, I had something similar with my first ban, which was for that. Was it Hugh? I think it was Hugh Jackman, or one of the actors who was coming through, and he's getting jabbed and double masked up. And he's like, oh, everybody stay away from each other and keep safe. And I said, well, you could bury yourself in a lead coffin if you really want to protect yourself. And that, of course, was threatening harm on someone. And it's like, well, actually, if you bury yourself in a lead coffin, you'll be protected from coronavirus, won't you? So I thought it was a helpful suggestion. But
And yet, of course, if you're a, I don't know, a CNN host and you encourage people to burn down or take a gun to shoot members of a Catholic school in America on Twitter, you can leave that tweet up and don't get even,
yeah,
you're not even bothered by it. It
yeah,
just shows
I,
you, what's really happening.
I have an acquaintance who I met once when I was in the middle of my 2-year traveling period in San Francisco in a bar, and she works in the White House, Voice of America, and I've actually had to mute her because the stuff that she writes was so anti-Trump and so pro-Biden, and then I tried to show her like medical stuff about how Fauci's a fraud, and they're just so close-minded in the American media. I just couldn't take it, and rather than try and argue with someone, but as you say, they stand there making just these ridiculous statements and they never get called up on it. I'm like you. I don't watch the news. I don't.
No.
It's,
I can't. It would drive me nuts. I wouldn't be able to.
yeah.
I haven't watched. I used to religiously watch years ago now, probably a decade ago. I used to watch Question Time and Newsnight religiously, and I've actually been on Question Time twice. Not on the panel, obviously, but
Yeah.
I've been on. I've actually asked a question. I asked. I'll tell you how long ago it was. It was who was the very young leader of the Conservative Party that with a baldy head that was always
William Hague.
William Hague.
Yeah.
William Hague was on, and I asked him a question. He was actually, funnily enough, I suppose they all are when you meet them in person, quite an impressive person in terms of the way he carried himself and the way he spoke. But you wouldn't think that from watching him on the TV or probably listening to him now. But at the time, I remember thinking, wow, I can see why you are where you are. He seemed very together, well put together.
It's just well rehearsed, isn't it? I mean,
Well, yeah, he's a professional, isn't he? Professional communicator.
Just professional liars, aren't they?
Yeah.
My mother was a lawyer. She became a corporate lawyer after her endeavours as a mature student and did some very, very interesting things. So I grew up dealing endlessly with professional liars, phoning her up to discuss affairs, and it's very boring. I've never really felt the need to lie, which is probably my downfall and why I'm not super successful. But I just don't have time for the bullshit. I don't like conning people. I don't get any. There's no satisfaction in it for me. I'd rather be open and honest, and I kind of find pleasure in watching people unravel and expose themselves. I get more out of that than money could ever give me.
Well, my previous career, I was a property developer, and I suspect that I was never. I did okay, but I was never. They normally say that property developers are either poor or either bankrupt or filthy rich, but I was one of the few that was sort of in between. I know that there were situations in that career where I could have done things that would have made a significant
Yeah,
difference.
when I came on here, I had in the back of my head, we need to hear more about Sam Lowry, Vox Pop Mark's backstory, because you touch on it and people never actually. So how did you get into that in the first place?
Well, I originally qualified as a chart surveyor. And the surveyors there's a wide band. Everyone thinks of surveyors as being people with fluorescent jackets on that stand there with the odd lights, but
no, and tutting a lot. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that sort of stuff. I was a valuation surveyor, so basically, you value stuff, but it means that most valuation surveyors end up either being agents, either commercial agents or sometimes resi agents, or which I was a commercial agent for a year, 10 years probably, and then after that I went into property development, which is a kind of a natural. You end up working for a developers and thinking, bloody hell, hang on a minute, I'm giving them all the information and they're making a fortune. So foolishly you go, oh, I could do that. So then so I did that for quite a long period of time as well, probably about 10 years. So both for a big firm and also a big Mayfair company, and building sort of big schemes, and then also on my own bat, sort of doing smaller stuff like drive-throughs, travel lodges.
Were you based in London?
I was in London for about 6 months. I've lived in London when I left college, and then I lived in London when I was for this other big firm. I lived there for about 6 or 8 months, but I lived out of a hotel primarily because I joined to be working out of the Midlands, and then I got quickly wheeled in to do another job.
So what year was that in London? Because it makes a difference.
Yeah, first time round it would have been 1988, 89, and then second time round was about 2000. And when did 7/7 happen? 2005, something like that.
That was 2005. I was broken up with my ex-wife about a couple of weeks earlier. Yeah. It was a tumultuous summer.
Well, I was supposed to be in Russell Square. I mean, everybody that lives in London probably said this as well at the time, but my trip would have been Russell Square, Northern Line, and then sometimes I'd just walk through Russell Square to get home or get back to the office. And we were having a Bulls, like a corporate day. We're having a Bulls competition in Regent's Park. And I was supposed to be walking back to the office, and I was going to go through Russell Square, and I just remember hearing on the grapevine, I think somebody said, bloody hell, there's been a bomb or something, and so it was about that time. So
but that's when London, because 2006 was probably my favourite summer, but 2005, back then it still was a vibrant. And where I lived close to Stamford Bridge, down on the King's Road, but right at the far end. And there were loads of bars and loads of restaurants, and a good mixed crowd of council house people and musicians and old people and students and all sorts. And you'd go to any bar or restaurant and you would meet, not ethnically diverse, but societally diverse.
Yeah.
And when I go back there now, it is half of it's empty. I probably had 10 bars within 100 yards, 200 yards of my flat, and now there are 2. And that's not because of COVID. That's just because the demographic has changed so much in the area, and it's awful. But that
horrendous.
The 7/7, I was working night shifts. I used to work night shifts, obviously doing the power stations, and I'd finish a night shift, and I was working in Victoria, so I was nowhere near it at the time. I later travelled on those routes, which always made me feel a bit unnerving. But I dreamt it happening. I got to bed. I finished at 7:30. I'd get home about 8:30. Went to bed 9:30. I woke up because I had a dream of this massive explosion, and it got me up. And you're shattered. You don't get up. And I thought there's something weird happens. And I turned the TV on. And there it was, and I could not believe it. And I told people at the time, and they wouldn't believe me. That it's just one of your stories, just bullshit. And I swear to God, I swear on anything I hold holy, that I
Was there an
dreamt
explosion
that happening.
near you? Could you have been
Not near
woken up
me.
by an
No,
explosion?
not down there. No.
It is weird, isn't it? Some of these things. I'm definitely more open-minded now than I mean. When I was at college, 85 to 88, one night I went back early because I had to cram for some exams, and so I think it was over Easter. I went back early, and I was always cramming for exams. That was my life basically, and so I was on my own. I thought I'll go down there. There'll be nothing to distract me. There'll be nobody there because no one else will have gone back to the house. So there's a shared house, and I'll just spend a week just doing all the stuff I should have done in the year before. So one night about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, I heard the front door slam underneath me. I was in the front room upstairs, and I heard the front door slam. It's like a Victorian terraced house. So I'd been on my own for about 3 days, so I thought, one of the guys must be back. So I opened the door, walked to the landing, and looked down, and I saw somebody, clear as day, walk underneath, open the door into the living room, shut the door. And I called, and they didn't answer. And I thought, well, it's one
Probably
of
a
the...
Londoner.
We're all mates. We'd all been together for... this would have been probably our second year, but we all shared the same house for 3 years. We hardly see each other, but we're all still mates now. And I thought, it's probably grumpy old sod who's come up from Devon. And he'd have come up on a motorbike, so it had been quite a hard trip. So I just assumed he was a grumpy bastard. So I went downstairs to have a chat with him, and opened the door into the living room. It was dark. Put the light on, walked through into the kitchen. It was dark, nobody there. The kitchen door is locked. So I don't know what the hell I saw, but and nobody came back to the house for about 2 days. That was that's my weird story of
Well,
I can't explain.
I went when I was at this boarding school from the age of 7 to 11, which Lawrence Fox's dad and uncle went to as well, which is kind of weird.
Oh, really?
I think they did the prize giving my first term, and it was a Jacobean mansion out in Buckinghamshire, like an old E-shaped one, and boarders would, we were boarded, and actually she was in the same dorm as Michael Vaughan when he was 7. Michael Vaughan, not Michael Vaughan, Matthew Vaughan, the film director.
Oh, right.
So this is one of my weird. This is what I got so many little weird stories like this. So at the time, he thought that he was Robert Vaughan, the actor's son, and so he'd get dropped off in a limo. My mum was dropping me off in a convertible Citroen Diane 6, and everyone else is turning up in BMWs and Mercedes. So anyway, he was there, and then it turns out that he wasn't the son of Robert Vaughan, the actor. He was the son of some Monaco prince, so he was even wealthier with a bigger background. But so he's did okay for himself. Anyway, married Claudia Schiffer at the start. Anyway, we would be in these 7 years old, and we'd be in these rooms, and anyone who got out of bed, you would hear it because the floorboards would creak, but you would see lights moving around the wall. You would hear gravel moving outside, and everybody who went to that school who slept over knows that there was something else living there as well, or not of this world. And the worst weekends were when everybody else went home, and it was only the kids whose parents couldn't get them back for whatever reason. And you'd all move into one dorm, about 12 of you, and the rest of the building would be empty, and you'd have to creep your way to the toilets and just be absolutely petrified.
That's worse for a young kid.
Yeah, I mean, we had a covered up fireplace, and it was an old priest hole, and a matchbox car just rolled from one end of the mantelpiece to the other without anybody being out of bed. You'd hear the latches move. So I completely understand your, what were they called? Careful with my words here. Phantasmagorical experience. Is that right?
It sounds like it should be a word.
That sounds like something Marshall Williams would tweet about.
Well, your story just reminded me of there's a place in Worcestershire, an old hall called, I think it's Jacobean as well, called Harvington Hall, and it's got a moat round it, and it's a great old building. And when I was a little kid, I'm guessing I was probably about 7 or 8 or something, I went round there with, as you do at a weekend, and sort of ended up going around this place with my parents. And I just remember being in this room. There was a room at the end of the corridor on the first floor, and it was completely empty. And I walked in, and there was just a horrible feeling in there. And no one had said it's haunted, or, I hadn't, well, at least to my knowledge, no one had said it's been haunted. I remember walking in there, and it reminded me of, the film with Jack Nicholson in, The Shining.
Yeah.
And the two
Don't
kids.
talk about the cinematography, though.
I've got back to it. How about that? It was a bit like that. It was like the first floor of that. I walked in, and the door, I remember it like the door sort of slamming shut. I'm sure it didn't, but I just remember walking in and wanting to get out really quick. And then about 20 minutes later, we were downstairs reading some information board, and it said that apparently somebody had been imprisoned in there for years, and it was supposedly haunted. And I remember as a kid, I didn't say anything to my parents.
Did you feel that you felt a chill?
I felt.
You feel a chill?
It was more than a chill. It was the most horrible feeling I think I'd ever felt. It was like, how, if as an adult, if you hear some really bad news, like somebody close to you has died or something, and it's just this horrible feeling that you get. Well, it was like that as a small child, and I ran out of that room. I was absolutely.
Well, the other experience that I've had, which was kind of similar to that, was there's a music venue on Market Street in San Francisco, and I got to go backstage when Mumford and Sons were on because, as I've said before, I used to live next door to them for 3 years. So this was just around the time when they were starting to get bigger, and I met up with them backstage, and the guys gave us a guided tour of this old theatre. Market Street in San Francisco is the massive main street that kind of runs as a diagonal and cuts the city in half. And
I think I know. So is there an Apple store halfway up?
Where's the probably
there's 2 or 3.
The Four Seasons is on it. I know that.
Right. I've been there, I'm sure, because I've been.
You would have done if you've been to San Francisco. You'd have been on it because it's the main thoroughfare, and then Union Square's a couple of blocks up from it. So anyway, they took us down to the basement, and there were all these murals, fantastic murals from like the 1920s, 30s, 40s of semi-naked women serving tea and monkeys, and in amongst all that, bullet holes. And it's where Al Capone used to take his victims down to be executed. And next to it was these old furnaces which used to heat the place. And I'm guessing that old furnaces, because they're huge, great lumps of iron sitting in the dark, just get cold. But these things were icy, and because they used to chuck the bodies in, they'd shoot them in the room, drag them next door, chuck him in the furnace to dispose of the body. And you just felt this dark, ice cold, deathly grip of the thing, and it was very real, very weird.
I mean, I'm not someone who generally would. I'm not a sort of a great believer, but I do. A bit like with what we were talking about earlier about sort of tinfoil hat stuff. I'm open to listening to stuff, and if I could think of no other reason for it, then I think, I'm not just going to deny it because I'm scared of what that might mean. So
well, I've done enough. I did enough drugs in my 20s to open my mind to all sorts of things, and then because I did maths and I did mathematical physics, which kind of branches into chaos theory and special relativity, and what I wanted to do. I'll get into that in a bit. Something different. I wanted to do kind of chemical physics and really get into, the substance of matter and spectrography, but I ended up starting doing pure maths and then moving onto that. And if you read enough philosophy and ancient philosophies, and ancient religions, and how similar they are to modern physics. Tower Physics is a very old book now, which kind of ties the two together about how modern mathematics and ancient religions and Hindu and
is that all?
are very
Tao's sort of
similar.
yin and yang and all that sort of stuff.
Tao's yin and yang, yeah. So it's you know, this is why I didn't finish. But apart from getting married, the other reason I didn't finish university is that I can read it, I can sit with these geniuses that, because Imperial, there are a lot of very clever people. Well, they used to be, especially in maths department, and they just understand it and they can reproduce it. Chinese kids, Greek kids couldn't pass the English exam at Cambridge, so they end up at Imperial. And I could sit, and I knew I wouldn't be able to beat them in exams, and I didn't care about the exams once I got to London. But I didn't go to the lectures I didn't care about. I just went to the stuff on quantum mechanics, and just, I could read it, and I knew, looking at it, this is right. What you're saying in the proofs you're giving is right, and that for me was fine. And I managed to blag 2.5 years at Imperial without doing any studying or really going to any of the main lectures, just from what I'd learned at further maths A level.
That's pretty impressive, because you can't. I mean, I said to someone the other day, I did at A level, I did pure maths, applied maths, physics, and what was the other one? Anyway, I failed them all.
Well, so did I first time around as well. So yeah,
but I don't think you could blag things like maths and physics.
Well, I wanted to do, because I was on the year group that did the first GCSEs, but I'd done 3 O levels a year early. So I did maths, Latin, and French a year early at O level, and then you could see the difference in the intellectual level between an O level and a GCSE. It was like, I mean, O levels back then were probably what A levels are like now. I mean, it's terrifying how dumbed down this society's got. So I wanted to do maths, Latin, and French, and I probably should have become a barrister. And in fact, I actually met a judge yesterday, whilst having a drink out in the city here. And I said I told him about my background and brought up by a lawyer. And I said, no, I think I should have been a barrister. And he went, absolutely, you should have been a barrister. Just talk, and he knew from a half-hour conversation. And interestingly, he's never worn a mask. His partner never worn a mask. They've never had an injection, any of it. He's a judge. He thinks the whole thing is bullshit.
That's
so
interesting.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me that he said that either. I mean, I do think it's a matter of, because the thing with being a barrister or being an advocate, you've got to be able to think through everything so that you've got a defence to it, haven't you?
Yeah.
So
I just, because I grew up with my mother, just the two of us, when I wasn't at boarding school, I got used to arguing with someone who ended up being the first person to take Microsoft to court in the antitrust lawsuit in the EU. So
I think we need about 10 hours for this.
That's why I say I've got so many weird things that I've been around, but I'm just kind of an observer to a lot of cool shit that's gone on.
It's when you say you're a musician at the beginning, what do you play?
Okay, I was, pour another glass of wine. I was a singer. I was a solo. I was a choir boy.
Right.
And that started when I was about 8 at the boarding school, because we would have church every morning. And I absolutely loved it. But at the same time, I realized very quickly that I wasn't religious, because I didn't believe any of the prayers I was singing. So I would sing, and I would sing to with all my heart and soul, but I refused to say the prayers. And when I got to my secondary school, which was Magdalen in Oxford, Magdalen College School in Oxford, we have the choristers from the college who get a educational scholarship until their voice breaks, and then if their parents have the money, they get to stay at the school, and if they don't, they have to bugger off. And I could sing with them. And so when the school did choral events, because the choristers weren't, because they were doing stuff with the college. They didn't get involved in school choral events. So I was the lead treble for that. And I was devastated when my voice broke. And I never really found a range after that. And I haven't sung properly since then. But we used to tour and got invited to sing at people's weddings. And to be the lead treble in the midst of maybe a small orchestra, and to have bass and the tenors and the altos all behind you, because as they are in a semicircle, and you're in the middle, and you get to hear all of that resonant sound pouring over you whilst you blast out a descant over the top, gives you a massive adrenaline rush. I never learned an instrument. I wish to God I'd learned to play the piano, but I never did. I think a lot of people want to play the piano.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you say about barrister. Funnily enough, I wanted to be. The only thing I could think I wanted to do when I was younger was to be a barrister, and I, rather pathetically at the time, when I was about 13 or 14, I remember thinking, but I could never stand up in a court with all, with a judge and everything else, and do that. I was quite good at arguing, and I enjoyed the idea of it all, but I thought, and I still am pretty good at arguing a point, but I thought I'd never be able to do it. Of course, nobody, I don't suppose I actually ever said it to anyone, but nobody would expect that at 13 or 14 you're going to be able to stand up in front of a judge and argue confidently your case. But no one, it never seemed to occur to me, so I clearly wasn't that bright, that, as you get older, you...
You're self-confident. I mean, this is the other crazy thing. I mean, I don't know anybody from my part. And do I know anybody? I know my best friend out in San Francisco, who was my college roommate. I don't know anybody apart from him, from university or from school or from my childhood, or even my ex-wife. I haven't seen her in 15 years, and I am such a different person now. I used to be so shy. I'm like criminally shy, and somehow the process of when I left Imperial, I became a DJ. I got involved in the club scene, and I think the club scene and getting involved in underground dance music, and yes, okay, the drugs, but the drugs did a lot of good for me. They don't for everybody. They did a huge amount for me to bring myself out of the shy person that I was.
What sort of drugs did you do? Did you do sort of hallucinogenics or a wide range?
Yeah, I mean a lot of ecstasy when dancing and speed. Yeah. When it was very good quality, and then I used to take acid when I had a year off halfway through college as well, which was interesting. And I used to take trips because I was bored, just to challenge myself and to build some mental toughness if you get through a bad trip. Until it gets boring to the point where you've done enough self-exploration, and you've visited your demons and looked them in the face and go, all my paranoias are just that. They mean nothing.
Have you tried ayahuasca?
No. I'm very limited in just the very mundane. Tried mushrooms a couple of times, but they were just too weird and bouncy, different, soft rather than metallic and industrial. But yeah, I just see that episode of Sopranos when Tony Soprano goes into the desert and takes peyote, cactus, and you think, right. I just or DMT or whatever, and I just don't think I could handle that now. Like maybe it's so strong that it, you lose that consciousness and you lose that fear. But I'm too aware now of.
I'd be scared of what was going to come out. I think I'd be so bloody screwed up. I'd probably.
Yeah.
I didn't do much in the way of. I've done obviously. I've smoked cannabis and stuff, but although I was never a big fan of it, to be honest. And I've had one bad acid trip where I was spiked at a party once.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not funny.
And that was not fun. That was quite memorable. But I've never actually. I've always been a bit of a coward, actually. I think I would have done. I wouldn't
say that. I mean, it's things are things are the right people, the right place, the right time, and if that doesn't come up, then it's not right. So
Yeah.
you're just in different circles in a different environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly now. I mean, it wouldn't. I'm more open to it now. I was probably rather square when I was younger,
Oh
but
God, yeah,
you know,
definitely. But what I've found is all the cool kids at school turn out to be really fucking boring as adults, and a lot of the ones who are like really into chasing girls, and I was a very late developer in that aspect. But about probably 2/3 of them turned out to be gay. So there was some kind of massive over. I did go to all boys' school throughout my entire career,
yeah, so did I.
education as
Yeah,
well. But yeah, the ones who like and who would like take the piss out of the music teacher, saying, "Well, he's yeah," and really making a thing of it. And then it just turns out they were hiding in the shadows and didn't know how
yeah,
to express themselves. When you look back and you think, God, I used to worry so much about why wasn't I in your scene? And I was like, oh, thank God I wasn't in your scene, because
yeah.
yeah,
I wasn't really. I wasn't too worried about being in a gang or anything, and I was always relatively popular. I very rarely got anything like bullying or anything like that, but I wasn't.
oh, I did.
Yeah, I managed to escape it. I was kind of, I was never a bully, and I was never really bullied. I mean, everybody gets bullied at boarding school, don't they? I mean, to some
Yeah, well,
extent.
I was, I'm sounding like a real blowhard here, but by the time I was 10, I was in the class with the 13-year-olds, because I was too bright to do an 11 plus. So by the time I was 10, I could pass the 13 plus. But when you're in a boarding school,
I want to hit you already. I mean, it's a.
well, everybody did. Everybody did. Until I threw someone in, one day, only a couple of times have I lost my composure with pure rage. And I just lifted some guy up and I threw him into an unlit fireplace. And after that, it stopped, and when I left at 11, because I got the assisted place, and I went back a year, I think the next year, and I'd been obviously then a year in a secondary school or public school with real big guys. And so when I came back, they all thought they were going to treat me like the dumb, naive kid that I had been. But no, no, I wasn't taking any more of that. So I have experienced bullying, and I hate bullying, and I hate hypocrisy, and injustice. And injustice drives me to rage, and that's why I struggle so hard with this unscientific, illogical, non-fact-based reality that we are presented with at the moment. So stupidity can blunder its way to success, trampling over other people who are propping them up. And perhaps that's why we are due a fall, that has gone on for too long. Perhaps that's part of this capitalist crash, that it's been unsustainable, and the chickens have come home to roost.
Well, I think certainly you look at.
Doesn't help us, does it?
No, not at all. No, I mean
we can sit here with our moral high ground, but
yeah, I'd like to blame it on that. I'd like to say, yeah, it's just that I'm too good a person. But
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I do think. I mean, you said you haven't got children. I haven't got children either. So I do wonder. Nearly all my friends now have got children, and those that have, some of them have got very big jobs, and some of them have got sort of normal stuff. And the ones that have got very big jobs, generally, I know for a fact, because from time to time, over a few drinks they'll have told me, you can tell they've done something that they're not happy with at all. I don't mean necessarily illegal or anything. I just mean, they've had to go against what they wanted to do. But that's why they earn seriously big money and enjoy that sort of they have the lifestyle to match. But I knew them when we were both on the same level in terms of career, and I just wonder whether it's because they've got 2 or 3 kids' mouths to fill and all the rest.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, the Catholic guys that I worked with always said, you must have children because it will change your, it gives you something different. But the way my relationship ran with my ex-wife, there was never going to be, that was clearly never going to be a long-term relationship because we were so young and you changed so much. And
How old were you when you got married?
She was 19 and I was 23.
Right, so that is young, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she either went back to Croatia or we got married. And people, so this is one of the reasons I don't know many people from that time. They all thought that she was just doing it for passport, and we were together for 10 years. So clearly not. And the first 5 years were great because it was us against the world. And then once we got a little bit of success, then, but she was 24 and 25, and I was 30-ish. You're really, you're still kids.
Yeah.
And you've been together for 5 years, and God, I don't want to talk about her too much because it's unfair in many ways. But all the damage, or lots of the damage that the war had done to her psyche and her potential, we'd managed to unravel and build her confidence back up. And she's I would love to know what she thinks of what's going on now, because she grew up under communism. She in Yugoslavia in her childhood. She had the little red star. She had the box with the bits in it, and the communist manifesto and all the crap that they were fed as being part of Yugoslavia. And I would love to. Now she's super successful, remarried to a super successful guy, and God bless them. And I would never interfere with that, because I know stuff about her past that no one else will know in her sphere now. But I would love to know what she thinks about what's going on now, having escaped communism, having escaped a civil war, to come here to make a success of your life, and then for all of it to be potentially shut down. And where the hell do you go once you've gone through all of that? Even though you've got the life that you always dreamt of, what do you do? It's got to be so tough. But maybe one day I'll get a chance to ask her.
Yes. I mean, I can't even imagine what happens when you live through a war, especially as somebody, well, at any age really, but
so teens. Like, as I said, the people that we live with, like, she's there. She came here as an au pair, and then she's phoning home, and all right, get off the phone. What's she on the phone? And she can hear bombs falling around, in the background around our hometown. And these assholes just like making every single thing about our life impossible.
I didn't want to cut you off about the music, because I wanted to talk on that, but we started getting on to what's happening there politics-wise and what have you.
Before we do that, we were only halfway through talking about you. So you got into sailing.
I did, yes. So
how did that happen? What were you doing, and where did it take you?
One of the reasons that I think that young people at the moment, people in their mid-20s, are being young people in education as well, are being really badly served by what's happening now, life-changingly so, is because I was in '92 I was made redundant from quite a promising job, career, whatever, where I was told I was being groomed for this, that and the other. Now, of course, whether that was true or not, I don't know. But I went from being quite a cocky, relatively successful 27-year-old to being unemployed in '92. There was like a recession for 18 months, 2 years. And so I had 18 months, 2 years where I was basically out on my ear. I was unemployed. The first 6 months were great fun because I got quite a bit of money and all the rest of it. So, and then I started to get a bit lost in what I was going to do next, and you lose confidence and all the rest of it. So, so I think what's happening now in terms of all this stuff is, I think, really potentially really bad for young people, because it takes out of their life a lot of things, like meeting your future mate for a start. You know, when you're in your 20s and you're earning and all the rest of it, that's when potentially you meet the person that you end up settling
It's
down
not been
with.
too good for us either. From what
No,
I
we
gather.
both, yeah. So that's why I say looking in a mirror almost. But
I know it's surreal. Yeah.
so anyway, so the reason I tell you that is because I think I think it's horrendous what's happening to young people as well. But I think that had an effect on me, both because I suddenly realised that corporate life wasn't for me. You know, you basically get, when they need to get rid of you, they get rid of you. And I probably was a little bit naive and believed a lot of what I was told. And so from then on, I was always self-employed. I've always been self-employed, apart from a 2-year gap when I worked for this big developer. So that's the first thing. But then I went sailing. And I had been sailing before, but I decided, well, while I'm not doing anything, I'll go and cross the Atlantic, because I've always fancied crossing an ocean. So I went out to the Canaries, and this is how disorganised I was. I went out to the Canaries for the ARC, the Atlantic Rally for Cruisers, and I got there about a week after they'd all left. So I was then stuck in the Canaries for a week. So anyway, go on forever, but I basically...
Worst places to be in there. Really.
Well, yeah, it was okay, but you know, on your own, and people go, well, why are you here on your own? You go, well, they left last week. Yeah, I know, yeah. So anyway, so I started to get an idea that I perhaps didn't want to do necessarily what I did. I then had 7 or 8 or 9 years where I did my own thing property-wise, and I was had my own business and took on a partner, and we did quite well, or reasonably anyway. Had a decent living and what have you. And then because I think he was married and had 3 kids. We'd both gone to college together, so we'd known each other a long time. He was married with 3 kids, and I was single with no kids. And I found that I was basically living this really boring lifestyle, based largely around just working. And whilst at the beginning, when you're setting up a business, it's exciting, and every deal you do is money in your pocket, and you just think, wow, this is great. But when you take on overhead and staff and all the rest of it, it all becomes a bit of a grind again. And I just lost interest in it completely. And so it was a really awkward conversation, but I said to him, look, I don't want to do this anymore. All we're going to do is I'm basically going to be a drain on resources. I'm not going to be doing what I ought to be doing as a partner. And to be fair to him, really decent guy, and he just said, well, fair play. If that's how you feel, then let's find a way to get out of it. So we managed to sell the business, and we got out of it. And 2001, I remember I was vacuuming my car to sell it. So I was doing a bit of a valet on my car to sell it, because I was selling up and what have you, and I was going to go off and do my commercial tickets and then go sailing. So that was the day that 9/11 happened. So I don't know why I'm talking in terrorist attacks, but but yeah, it was the day 9/11
I'm
happened.
sure Michael Liversley would be able to connect the dots on all these
absolutely.
events. Yeah.
So I remember watching the second plane hit the tower in my house with my then lodger, who's a mate of mine. So anyway, so they were. Tell me about it. So then we. From there, I went off sailing, and I've been a professional sailor ever since, with a few gaps where I came back. When I was 40, I decided I needed to come back and get back into property, otherwise I'd never get back in. And I did that for a few years, and then I...
So what does being a professional sailor entail? Because I know absolutely nothing about it. I mean...
Well, a bit like being a surveyor or a lawyer, I suppose. You could do all sorts of things. So
could you sail a good-sized boat?
My ticket.
Would you need additional crew? I mean, like, could you?
Well, my ticket allows me to sail anything relatively small stuff. So I can sail anywhere in the world a vessel up to 24 meters and 100 tons. So that's a decent.
That's
size
sizable, isn't it?
yacht.
Yeah.
That's like like an Aneidan line, the yachts you see in the Aneidan line. There's some of the smaller ones of those. I could sail those as skipper.
So you could go around the Adriatic with like a cabin of 6 or 8 people.
Oh yeah. I've sailed around the world with crew of 20. So that's it's all very doable. That's what I
no,
do
no wonder
now
you're
is-
on. No wonder you're on Twitter all the time. You must be bored out your.
Well, I tell you what, being with late 2019, I think I might have had COVID, and I was on a yacht, and we were in the South Atlantic, and we all went down with, there's about 18 of us on board, and we all went down with this lurgy that we didn't know what it was, and it was exactly what you said. It was like profusely sweating, felt weak and tired and fluey. Didn't feel.
Were you choking up liquid off your lungs? I had a bottle by the side of the bed, and I would spit out saliva, basically, not phlegm. It was saliva off my lungs.
Well, I couldn't.
Nothing on the nose. Nothing on the nose. All on the chest.
Well, I lost my sense of smell, but that's not a bad thing when you're on a boat with 18 people. But I also got a cough so bad that whenever I lay down, and you're in a watch system, so you probably lie down every 4 or 6 hours and sleep for 4 or 6 hours, and every time I lay down, I couldn't lie down. I had to sit up because I would just cough myself almost to the point of being sick. Yeah. And basically everybody else got this. The guys got it worse than the girls, which was interesting. And because I was skipper,
because we suffer more. We suffer more than women. They don't. They don't complain. They don't understand, do they?
So, and because I was skipper, there's a little bit of you can't just go down. You have to keep going. So I don't know whether I don't think I was that bad. It didn't feel like really bad flu. It didn't feel that bad, but I felt ill.
Just to finish off my medical part of that, I thought I had lung cancer. I went and had chest X-rays. I was expecting to see a huge black blob on there. There wasn't, but what they found was a non-pneumonia viral infection, which they couldn't classify, and that was in February of 2020. Oh, so make of that what you will. Yeah.
Well, mine was in November 19. Yeah. But we had Chinese crew in the fleet, so I think
there you go.
And one of my first mate, one of my crew was really poorly for nearly 3 weeks across the South Atlantic, and I was quite worried about him. And he, at the end of it, he looked like death warmed up, and he went to hospital when we got in, and they said he got damage to his lungs.
I think I did.
So, and my first mate, he went down with pneumonia in Cape Town. So I think all things considered, there's a good chance we probably had it. But if we did, I'm bloody glad, because I didn't suffer that much, and I'll have had it, which would be nice. Otherwise, I haven't.
I can't. My congestion on my lungs has been terrible this year, and I don't know if it's because the hay fever has been bad this year, or I don't know if it's this alleged long COVID or what it is. But I'm a big chap and I am overweight, but it's not that. It's and every morning I wake up and I do this dry retch to try and clear, and it's awful. But anyway, it's like,
so
it's very odd. So was that the end of your sailing career then? This
hopefully
this
not.
Ship of Doom.
No. I mean, I've done so. Just to finish off there, then. So sailing wise, I've been sailing professionally since 2001. So I've been sailing for as long as I've been in property. Although I'm kind of still in property a little bit. I've got some. I've still got a stakeholding in a small company. So, but I've been sailing since 2001. So that's what 20 years now. So I'm probably really.
But you live right bang in the middle of England somewhere, don't you? You're not very close to the coast.
So absolutely, which is quite nice. Well, I'd rather. Well, there's plenty of places I'd rather live, but it's not a bad place where I live. But
where would you like to live? We've both. I've travelled around the world, so I've circumvented the world, but I've actually only visited about 14 or 15 countries. Which, when I kind of did these things, tag where you've visited. It's like, shit, that's actually really pretty boring. There's a lot of other places to see. But where would you choose? Where do you think are the finest places on earth?
Well, actually, what I'd choose now, if I could, and this is what worries me with travel and this vaccine
exactly.
passport. But my plan was always to get a relatively modest yacht and disappear and just move every few months.
Well, that's what I keep suggesting to James Stanley
Yeah.
is that we buy a fucking great Sea Link ferry or ocean cruiser with about 300 of us on it. Some people who can cook, some people who can trade and make some money, because there's plenty of, there's a great cross section of people with different talents. And we just move from port to port wherever is sensible at any given time.
We might have to mount guns to it. That's the only trouble. But,
well, that's fine. I mean, Dick Delingpole likes his military stuff, doesn't he? So
it'd be like that. It'd be like that short film that was at the beginning of was it Life of Brian? The something in insurance company where all those accountants sail an office block across to New York and do a boarding raid on the bankers in New York. Have you ever seen that? Monty Python.
No, I don't think I have.
It's wild. It's actually brilliant. Really good short film.
So where's it going to be? There must be a couple.
Right, where would I go?
I love Vietnam. I think Vietnam, although they've gone a bit mental since they've got some infections now, Vietnam is one of the best countries, and the people are they've got so much energy. They've got a brilliant sense of humour. They've got incredible work ethic, and they're up for doing anything. And the food is amazing, and their smiles are amazing. I'd be very happy to be.
I've never been. I've been to that part of the world. I've been to China, which I didn't like. I've been to
Hong Kong.
I've been to Hong Kong. I went there when I was 19. I loved Hong Kong. I would have stayed there if somebody had offered me a job.
I'd stayed in Vietnam.
No, I must go to Vietnam.
It's so different between the north and the south, obviously, and whether you're in the mountains or on the islands. The islands on the Cambodian coast, like Phu Quoc, although to be fair, it's probably a bit touristy now, but they are awesome people. And Sri Lanka as well. Sri Lanka is just, the people there are absolutely brilliant.
So were you at these places because you were travelling or because you were working?
Yeah, no, travelling.
Travelling, right. Oh, even better. So
when I left my major job, my main career was I was at EDF for 10 years, and when the way electricity is traded in this country changed in 2001, they needed to set up an operations and trading team, and I basically was the first one that they hired, and I'd been at Statoil, and they walked into a pretty much empty room, was given a copy of the grid code, balancing and settlement code. We bought a power station. You need to work out how to make money with it within a month, and set it all up from scratch and recruited everybody. And it was, I knew every single thing that went on in just that whole process, like back of my hand. So
that was a management and leadership role, was it? Well, rather than
they tried to get me into management, but I enjoyed the shift life too much, and I'm not the corporate schmuck. And you earn pretty good money on shifts with a lot of time off. We used to work 7 days and 7 nights every 7 weeks, and I was earning $4,000 a month, paying £1,000 a month for the rent on a flat on the King's Road, and having a fucking good time. I had right next to Stamford Bridge, so met some of the footballers, met Abramovich. I've seen my weirdest claim to fame is that I've seen Roman Abramovich naked. Which is,
so you've got to tell us about that.
Because his, despite his many millions, he's a very humble guy. Millions, billions, but his registered office for his company is actually at Stamford Bridge for his financial company. And there's a terrific gym behind the football ground, and I was a member there. And I just walked down the stairs into the changing room one day, and he was stood there staring into space, stark bollock naked with a towel around his neck. And I was like, if I'd had my phone out and handy, I could have made a few quid. I probably would have vanished forever. But and I thought, shit, if I fall over whilst I'm like taking my socks off and knock into him, like,
that'll be
and he's not just loaded with money. That's all I'll say.
Some people get all the luck, don't they? Bloody hell.
Yeah.
So,
how did we get onto that? Where was this
that
conversation
was a
going?
good one. That was a good one. I have a claim to fame to do with Claudia Schiffer. You said that you.
Well, yeah, she's married to my old schoolmate Matthew Vaughan. Yeah.
Well, I can almost guarantee that she would remember, if you told this anecdote, that she would still remember me. It was early in my career, and I was at my sailing career, and I was at the Porto Cervo Swan World Cup as a sailor. It was like a race regatta, and it's full of the great and the good. Loads of all the wealthy people. And I literally bumped into George Soros once at a party, nearly knocked him off the pontoon.
You should have done.
I should have done. Had I known, I'd have wrestled. I'd have taken him over, taken him out with me, sort of jumped in and taken him down. But I bumped into him. But more impressively than that, I went out with Accenture, the consultants or whatever. Yeah. I went out for a day, taking these guys out for a jolly round Sardinia. And when we came back, it had been a bit rough. And when we came back, we were coming alongside Stern 2 on the big. There's a big concrete quay in Porto Cervo, and everyone's strutting up and down the quay, doing that sort of what they do in Spain, where they all just sort of walk in their best clothes up and down, sort of showing off to everybody. And there is a name for it, but I forgot what it's called. Anyway, obviously it's not in Spain; it's Italy. But they're walking up and down doing this thing.
Yeah, no, they do that. They do it in Croatia as well.
Yeah, you
get all dressed up, you walk along the river, you sit down, you have a drink, you watch everybody else do it, and it's what everybody does between 7 and 9 every evening.
Exactly. So I'm on the helm, bringing the boat in, and with mooring Stern 2, and I've got one of the clients stood next to me, who is Italian chap, and he's looking at me, he looks a little bit green, and I'm wearing all whites, because we all had to wear whites when we were working. And so as we come in, they take the stern lines and they tie us up. I'm just talking take up on the port stern line. And I looked at him, and I got my sunglasses on. I looked at him and I went, "Are you okay?" And he looked straight at me. He was probably about a foot away from me, and he threw up projectile vomit straight into my face. Now, I've been sick on quite a lot over 20 years, but this guy was full on, absolute. He'd had a really heavy lunch, red wine,
some seafood.
It was lamb shank. Could have been lamb shank. I think he had. Anyway, so he covered me. I was just brown, basically, and steaming. So I turned. I wasn't skipper. I was first mate. So I turned to the skipper and said, "Skip, think I'm going to go and clean up?" And he sort of looked over. "Oh, Jesus Christ! Yeah, okay." So I went up the gangplank to go to the shower block, and as I'm walking down the main dock in Porto Cervo, who should walk the other way but an immaculately dressed, absolutely beautiful Claudia Schiffer. And awesome. She looked at me with this kind of like, I'm never going to forget this look, sort of look.
Well, she used to be seen occasionally in the Tesco Express on the King's Road down the just before the Wandsworth Bridge, because Matty would take her because he's a Chelsea season ticket holder. He would take her. I never saw her, which is devastating. Apparently, yeah.
She's a very, very beautiful woman. But
is she? Yeah.
I mean, this is 20 years ago.
I lived in Chelsea for 15 years. There's loads of them. I'm not impressed.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. The reason why I went travelling was because after the EDF, they bought British Energy, and that's when I got the chance, as you did, to a similar sort of deal of getting a payoff.
Yep.
And I was divorced, no kids, didn't own the flat I was in, I had no job, I had 50 grand in my pocket, and thought, fuck it, I'm gonna bought a first class round the world ticket. And the Ashes were on, 2010-11 Ashes, when we won out there for the first time in 24 years, whatever it was. So I spent 3 months in California with my best mate, and then a month in Oz, and then did Southeast Asia, and then back to the UK in 2011, when it was, similarly to you, there was absolutely nothing happening, like in 92. And if you remember 2011, it was a pretty grim year. So I thought, sod it, I'll go again. And I'm really glad I did, because when I went back to Vietnam for the second time, I was sitting on a beach one time and just reading. No drink. I didn't drink anything the whole time I was in Vietnam. It's not that sort of country. It's not part of the culture. You just don't want to do it. And I was sitting on this beautiful beach on this little island and reading some Jack Kerouac. And I looked up, and the beach and the sea and the sky all turned into white oscillating light for about a second or a second and a half, and then it snapped back out of it. And I had no idea at the time, but apparently that's what happens when you meditate. And people go into these states where they see one frequency of light, and then the deeper you meditate, you go through different colors of sight. But everything just became connected. And I'd kind of done a bit of reading on free will and what's it? Free will and I can't remember now. Determination.
Self-determination.
Yeah. And I thought, yeah, everything is just connected, and you've got no control over any of it. So don't worry about anything. And since then, I haven't. Since then, I've just let whatever be, and there's no such thing as a good thing or a bad thing. There's just a moment in time, and it's gone. And all you got to do is find something in even the darkest moments, like after being let go from the investment bank, going from 100k a year to nothing, with no money in the bank and nothing to fall back on, and having taken out a 2-year contract on a $2,000 a month flat. But I was sitting on the tube and looking at the pole and this shine on the pole and going, oh, that's actually quite pristine, and there's something about that light on this pole that just transcends all the shit that's just suddenly come down on me. And there's nothing I can do about any of that because I'm sat here on this tube. So I'm just going to look at that and enjoy that. And since then, I don't worry about anything. I toss a coin over half the decisions I make in my life now. Just removes all angst, and doesn't mean you don't take responsibility or feel culpable, because it's weird how your body chemistry reacts to the things that go on around you. But it's changed me. It changed me hugely. Going back on that second leg of that journey, but there was a reason why I had to do it.
When I spoke to Michael, if you listen to that, you'll remember I had a point. I think I kind of undersold myself a little bit, but to a large extent, it was what I felt was that I didn't really think I was a very spiritual person. I don't have that. It's not that I'm not open to it, but I don't have that. Yeah. I haven't had that experience, which I envy you for. But
it's weird because for me, it's not like a spiritual thing. It's like because I do maths and do mathematical physics, I see it as just like the way everything interconnects on an energy level. I can't take that to a like Denningpole's got the God thing going on. I can't take it to that. There's some consciousness behind it. I just kind of see it for what it is, which again is spiritual in that whole tower physics kind of deal. That the two are the same. I don't have statues to Buddha sitting around or anything. You know what I mean?
Well, I know I do envy. I mean, I think I said to my late father when I sold my business and went off sailing, and he was not best pleased. He'd obviously paid for an education for a start, but both
you should have been delighted.
Well, this is where I'm going. Both my grandfather didn't have a pair of shoes until he was 10 or 11 when he started work, and he worked dragging a cart of chain up Quarrybank High Street. That's what he did when he was 10 or 11 to support something like 8 sisters, because his father was a drunk and left and all the rest of it. So my family has gone from that to when my father was my age, or younger than me, when my father was about 35, being quite comfortable, comfortable middle-class kind of family. I'm obviously third generation, so I'm trying to drag it all back down to the gutter. But But I had a reasonably successful business when I was in my 30s, mid 30s, and he obviously thought, right, well, that's one of my sons sorted, and now I've just got to sort the other one. So, and then when I came and said, look, Dad, I'm not happy doing this. It's not working. I'm gonna scale down, and I'm gonna go off, and I'm gonna go sailing for a few years and just see what happens. And he was. They've always been really good, both parents, at not giving me a particularly hard time. But that was the one time where he was like, "Are you sure you're doing the right thing? I mean, it seems to be going okay for you and everything else." Anyway, I just knew I couldn't live the life I was living, so I went off and I did the sailing and everything else. And like everything else, there's only so long that you can be sitting on a dinghy next to a £5 million super yacht in the sun in the South Pacific, cleaning the hull, thinking I'm going to meet that beautiful Australian girl at 6 o'clock on the beach for a barbecue, and that's great. But after about 6 months, if you've got any form of intelligence about you, it does start to get a little bit. It's not very challenging, So I'm not going to say it's not fun, and I'd be happy to do it now. But for a while, after a while, I started to get a bit bored with it. But
I can understand that, right? Because when I did my traveling, I had zero responsibilities. Yeah, and there's not many people, and okay, you can do that when you're 22, 23 in a gap year or whatever, post uni. But I did it when I was 38 to 40.
I was similar.
When you've already lived, and I got rid of everything I owned. Literally everything I owned. I had a bag of clothes and a shoulder bag with a laptop and a passport.
That's liberating, though, isn't it? Isn't that liberating?
Unbelievable. And
I did exactly the same thing.
I got to experience that for a year and a half, where I was beholden to nobody. I did find that having even that small, and it's a pitifully small amount of money, and for some people it's an absolute fortune, but 50k is absolutely pitiful. But I've found occasionally it made me a real asshole, and I don't think I'd be very good with it. Maybe if I had shitloads of it, I'd be better. But when I've got no money, I spend it like mad. When I had that tiny little bit, I became a little bit. But yeah, to be completely free with no obligation, and therefore you've got to kind of find a focus in your day. And it's not a matter of being told what to do if you're working in a job, because I don't do what I'm told anyway. But it's a matter of, okay, what are you doing to? Can you sit and do nothing and just be? And I don't think a lot of people can. But I found I really enjoyed it. But then occasionally I get this pang to be in an office with my 8 screens of trading data and whatever going on, and just the corporate Amex and all the crap. And I'd kind of watch a movie in the middle of the night, some ropey Wi-Fi, and go, oh, look at that, an office block with strip lighting. And everything that people.
It's structure, isn't it? It's a structure.
It is. But I mean, it would quickly pass. And oh my God, if I had the money to do nothing, I would actually be really good at it.
I think people that say that if they won the lottery and they would still carry on, I think you've got no imagination, because I could fill the rest of my life with loads of stuff I'd want to do if I didn't have to. Well, at the moment, I haven't been working.
We were going to talk about music. I would buy a music studio.
Absolutely.
Because I got into dance music when I was in London at uni, which is why part of the reason I dropped out, and then did some clubbing, did some club nights and DJ'd in London and DJ'd in Croatia. But I never got the chance to produce music. But I have the classical training in music, but I also think that the current modern electronic music has reached its well past its pinnacle. And as I said to Simon when I was on the Gus stream, the 70s and 80s, Giorgio Moroder, and then the New Romantics, which the New Romantics took the basic technology that Giorgio Moroder had used with synthesizers and created that whole New Romantic scene, which kind of was the punk of its age, although it didn't look like it. Aesthetically, it was a complete rebellion against everything else that was going on. And then the dance music culture that came out of poverty of some parts of the country, and this is where I would probably disagree with Michael, because I got the benefits of Thatcherism, so and some areas have done very well, and I'm sure a lot of people who are working in fairly mundane lower middle class jobs would rather be sitting in with a computer with a headset and down a mine dying when they're 50 from whatever. But, I'm going to judge that. But there's got to be a new musical revolution that's going to come along. You had rock and roll from the blues guys and what was going on in America, from blues to rock and roll to rock, and that was kind of instrument-based music kind of leveled out. I don't think there's been too much new from that since. The electronic music form came along to the point where it's bastardized by EDM and these arseholes making $500,000 a night, not having any talent whatsoever, just pre-programming everything, and it's all corporate sponsored, and it's not what the dance music scene was supposed to be about. And now there will be something that will come along, right? Because there always is. And what is it? Where is it? What is this youth? And you talk about how youth is suppressed and they're not able to travel. What are they doing? What are the young minds, the smart young minds working on that's going to come out and be the new wave for the next 30, 40 years out of this mess?
You've really hit on something there. I mean, I suppose if it's good, then probably people of my age should be disgusted by it for a start. If you're going to be youth, but
I'm down with the kids. Speak for yourself.
Yeah. I'd like to. Well, actually, funnily enough, because of what I do sailing wise, I'm always mixing with people in their early 20s. So I actually, one of the things I like about it is that you are. I basically get called, Gramps or Pops or whatever else. But I mean, it is quite nice mixing with younger people. But yes, what's going to happen? Because at the moment, I think, and like ever, they always get a hard time. When I was a kid, I remember people used to say, "Oh, the youth nowadays, they always do," and I used to be pissed off because I go, "Yeah, well, that's because you've watched one program on the TV and this."
Youth today have never had it so good. Apart
yeah,
from the
exactly.
fact they can't do anything now.
Exactly.
They've got bloody supercomputers in their pockets.
But they've got
freedoms
convenience and comfort. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But do they have? What do they do with it? I mean, I guess we only ever hear about the bad stories, don't we? And we see these kids stabbing each other. And there was another video out today of some chap chasing 3 other chaps down the street with a machete because they'd attacked him with a knife. And it can't just be that. We can't just focus on that as the vision of what youth is in our society. Because where I live, there's fantastic schools and cool music, and they do great work, and the kids are well behaved. Coming out of London, where they would try and fight you on the bus to make themselves look big. Here, they would like say, "Oh, would you like to sit?" And they've got their feet up everywhere on the seats. Here, they're like, "Oh, do you need to sit down?" Polite and courteous. So they're still out there. There's still hope.
Yeah.
And I've because I don't have kids, but my best mate who's out in San Francisco, and I have since the day he was born been bad uncle to his boy, because my best mate is an only child. So his wife's got. Has his wife got some sisters? I can't remember. But basically, like they've said from day one, we want you to do things with him that we're not allowed to as parents. Yeah. And we've always had an unbelievably tight bond, and he's super, super smart because his parents are smart. And I try to keep up with where he's at. And sometimes you think these kids are super geniuses, and like they're doing all this coding themselves. He was loading up DVDs. He was not just DVDs. He was logging onto YouTube to look up kids' TV programs when he was 2. Yeah. So I'm not even joking. But I guess California. That's you're around that sort of environment, and then the other half the time you're like, yeah, you're just a dumb teenager still. Yeah.
Well, kids. I think if you don't have kids, it's hard. I had a 5-year or 6-year relationship with a girl who I was definitely batting out of my league with this very beautiful.
She was lucky to have you.
Well, that's what I used to tell her. But no, we had about 6 years, very good 6 years actually, but on the whole. But it didn't work out in the end. But she had 3 children from a previous marriage, and they were all delightful, all 3 of them, and they were very intelligent. They were very respectful and polite and pleasant. Had all the normal, like the 13-year-old was gangly and sort of tall and voice breaking and totally didn't know what to do with himself, and the little boy was just basically just a bundle of joy and very intelligent, really, really clever, and the elder daughter was she was almost, she's a teenager. She was kind of not really interested in what was happening at home anymore. She was off doing her thing. But it was an amazing experience for me, because it's the only experience I've had of, I've got friends who've got children, but where I'm living in the same house as children of a variety of ages, and I was totally out of my depth at the beginning. And the girl, my only experience of children really was me as a child. So the girl I was with, she early on, when I never actually lived with her, but we had a great situation where I would live for like 4 days with her in Bath actually. So it was not far from Somerset sort of area, and so I would live down there for 4 days, and then come back up to the Midlands to work and stuff. And so I got the best of both worlds for quite a while, where I was sort of I could get a break from it. But she said to me early on, look, if this is going to work, you're going to have to be prepared to I was going to say discipline, because she wasn't saying, right, here's the whip, you can beat the crap out of them, but it was kind of, if you say no, they must take it as no, and I'll support you, sort of thing. And I suddenly realised for the first time in my life that adults don't really want to be the well, it turns out lots do actually, given the last 18 months, but many adults don't want to be the authoritarian rule setter, but sometimes you have to do it. So, if you're walking around Sainsbury's and the 6-year-old is ramming the shopping cart through negligence rather than being a nasty little 6-year-old into the ankles of the person in front of you, you have to take control of the shopping cart and say no, and suddenly you're the bad guy and you're the worst thing since Genghis Khan. And I never had that experience before, because I'd never been that person. I'd always been the person not giving a damn. So it was quite an experience inheriting, for want of a better word, a family, and I think it was, where am I going with this? I think it was great to see that kids they haven't actually changed much. This is a while ago now. This is probably 10 years plus ago, but kids haven't changed, and they're all exactly the same, really. But what worries me now about kids now is a lot of them haven't been to school for the best part of 18 months. They haven't been mixing with their friends. Some of them have, I suppose. They're going to have missed lots of education, which is one thing which is bad. But they're also, what have they been taught about the way the government interacts with people? When I was a kid, I can't really remember the government being involved, whereas now the government's telling you whether or not you can go out.
Yeah.
So I worry about youngsters. So
yeah,
like a really old
my friend in San Francisco, his neighbours, they homeschooled their children, and they've all turned out to be remarkably well balanced, actually, and all gone on to university. Again, they did have very smart parents. And if I was to have children, I would strongly consider that rather than sending them to certainly. I don't, without wanting to sound snobbish, to send them to a bulk standard secondary school. Certainly in London. And again, I got lucky because I got all my fees paid to go to a very good school. But even that was actually a shithole, looking back on it. And they didn't do me any favours, and I had to go and do retakes because they failed me completely in my education. So I find it terrifying to think, and I don't think I could ever get into a relationship with someone who had children, but maybe with this old age, maybe I could. But I
think that's the thing. Yeah,
I find it very difficult. And I had a pseudo stepfather. I had someone who moved into my house, who was a complete arsehole, and I was very glad when he died of lung cancer, which is an awful thing to say, but he wasn't physically violent, but just mentally very abusive, and he was not good in that relationship with my mother.
I can imagine. I mean, nothing worse, is there, as a kid, if you've got somebody coming into your home who is, you shouldn't have to be, tiptoeing around. I'd gone from being in university, the shittest mid-1970s university accommodation on Sussex University campus, with mould on the walls, badgers eating all the rubbish, cricket infestations. From there to boarding school, getting beaten up relentlessly by kids 3 years older than me that were in my class. And when I finally get out of there, I finally get home, and there's some bloke moved in. So I suspect that's why I've never really had this kind of family. Some people, they're desperate to have families. For me, I'm very happy to be on my own. And being married was interesting, but I couldn't even imagine sharing a house with someone for more than a night. It's like, well, I'm the opposite there, because my parents were happily married for 50 years. So, and I'm not married, and I've never been. I've been close a couple of times, but I've not been married. So I don't actually. I think there's a lot of it's luck and opportunity.
I was hoping it was going to be Claudia Schiffer when you were covered in Italian vomit.
Or my other celebrity story, which is
take a shot, right?
I once had a lift in a golf cart on the island of Mystique by Uma Thurman.
Oh God! Now I am jealous.
Uma Thurman. It was at Christmas.
Timothy Leary's daughter, right? Or was it what was she? Goddaughter?
I don't know.
She was related to Timothy Leary somehow.
Oh, really? That's quite cool. I was walking up the hill from Mystique. It's a bit like a toy town Caribbean island. It's very nice, but it's really well manicured. Even the fields are manicured. And I was walking up the hill from Basil's Bar, which is an amazing bar on stilts out into the Caribbean. And I was walking up the hill one day from there to the Cotton House, which is at the top, a couple of miles away, and with a couple of mates. And halfway up the hill, we heard this little golf cart, because everyone drives around in golf carts. And I heard this zzz coming up the hill. So, as you do, I sort of put my thumb out, just to sort of, on the off chance. And the golf cart stopped with two gorgeous blonde girls. One was Uma Thurman, who at the time would probably have been mid-20s, something like that. And she must be similar age to me, I would think. And turns out it was her niece, I think. I think it was her niece, who was quite young, she was about 16 or something. And she just said, would you like a lift? So me and my two mates jump in the back of this golf cart. And
ride for a ride.
This hill. And so as we're going up the hill, I'm the only person who realises who it is. So I'm turning around to them next to me and going, it's Uma Thurman, this is Uma Thurman. And they're going, who? And I'm like, shut up. It's like, who the fuck's Uma Thurman? Oh, for God's sake. So so that was my other claim to fame with beautiful women. But
well, I got given a shot of rum by Kate Middleton, which was quite pleasant. She's a very attractive girl.
Well, did you see on? Actually, I was lying. Did you see that thing on Twitter that I posted the other day? That when I was I think it was 19 or 17.
We are so bad. It's just like we are the worst name droppers.
We need somebody else. We need Simon here to go.
We do need Simon Roberts to absolutely put us in our place.
I think I've heard. I think you're on your third glass of wine, and if my ears tell me right, I'm
I
on
think
my
so.
third whiskey. So yeah. But remember Glynis Barber? That's the last one I'm going to do. Remember Glynis Barber? It might be before your time.
I don't. Yeah.
She was very, I'm sure she still is very gorgeous in her own way. But 40 years ago or whatever, she was in a program called Dempsey and Makepeace.
Yes, I remember it. I remember the name.
Attractive blonde actress. Yeah. And I spent an amazing, probably 4 or 5 minutes crammed next to her in Val d'Isere on a ski lift at the age of, I think it was 17 or 19. And that will stick.
We know what you did that night. Yeah, we know what you did that night. Yeah. Well, Jenny Agutter lives a couple of miles down the road here somewhere, and her, I don't know if it's a daughter or daughters or something, or granddaughters or something. They occasionally visit my friend's garden for a barbecue, but I've not. Yes, I think even at the age she is now, I think he's still alive. I think Jenny Agutter would still probably not be sideways.
I think she'd be pretty classically beautiful still. She had that English
kind of
rose look, didn't she? With very strong facial features. But Somerset, I have to say, is very nice.
Single old men talking about women. Then
this is what people want, you know. It should be talking about the crap that's happening.
We're fortunate we've managed to avoid all that. I mean, I really don't think there's anything we can add to that, is there?
I don't think there is. I'm getting quite bored of it. I mean, it sounds glib to say bored of it because I think it's horrendous what's happening, but I just am getting so bored of it. And everybody's saying,
well, the trouble is,
with the freedom fighters and all this sort of crap.
Well, that's the problem, though. I mean, but that's the trouble, and part of what Benbridge said is actually right, because, I do feel like going to Parliament and burning its fucking grounds and trying these bastards and watching them swing. And I don't want to just do it. I don't thinking like, without rationale. But I think they're fucking crimes against humanity, and bastards like Hancock are fucking evil as all hell and guilty of Christ knows what. And there's nothing wrong with saying, I want to see these people fucking stand trial and justify what's happened. I want there to be a proper inquiry. And it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. They will snuck off into the dark with their backhanded millions through these PPE contracts and the rest of it. And why shouldn't we be angry enough to want to... We're supposed to be in a democracy. We're supposed to have parliamentary debate. These arseholes are on 80k a year. I want to go to my Tory MP's office and daub his door with paint saying enough, or, tape it. But even a simple act like that is going to completely end any chance of a career or any chance of,
you can't say I am fucking angry and I want to. I mean, I get really annoyed with Claire Fox on Twitter, and I've got a lot of respect for her, but she is so, we can't use hyperbole. What do you mean we can't use hyperbole? I've been able to bloody work for 18 months. I'm getting nothing from the government for not being able to work for 18 months. Millions of others are getting money from the government, which we're all going to have to pay for, and our children and our grandchildren if we have any. And why is hyperbole not allowed? It seems bloody ridiculous. I love the fact that she engages with people on her feed, because she must get, I know she gets a lot of crap from both sides of the argument. So I love the fact that she engages with the feed, but it pisses me off that she's chastised me 3 or 4 times for using hyperbole. And I just think, how can you say it's hyperbolic when it's similar to what we were saying with the thing on the Gulf Stream or whatever? If you look at what's happening, you don't have to believe in lizards being in charge of the world, or or even in the Great Reset, which has been documented very clearly, so it seems pretty obvious to me that it's happening. I don't understand why you have to believe in that when they've written books on the bloody subject. But as soon as you start going down that route, she has to be super reasonable. And it's probably because she knows everybody in Parliament. So she thinks of them as being decent, reasonable people. Actually, I'm not sure they are.
You know, when you're in that sort of position, you have to perhaps not be as forthright as you may wish, but it doesn't help to be so vociferous about things which clearly don't make sense when you can see so much. That's the contradictory part. I mean, I've even got bored of Peter Hitchens.
If he mentions electric scooters again, I'm going to go.
Well, Hitchens is always right 20 years later, but never did anything about it, and then he's moved on to something else, and it's like, oh, yes, it's easy to be right 20 years later when cultures have changed. But he didn't actually you never done anything with this great intellect.
I have a lot of I think Peter Hitchens is probably one of the most right people. I don't mean right. I mean correct right.
Yeah.
Over the last 20 years. And it must be, I look at my own, when I'm looking at somebody who has just recently got red-pilled, for example, and I think, well, I was there 5 years ago, it is a little bit frustrating, because you go, well, the writing was on the wall then, why didn't you see it then? But I suppose we all get red-pilled at some point. Peter Hitchens was red-pilled probably 20 years ago. So he was writing books about the end of Britain 20 years ago. So I suppose
I knew Blair was a disaster.
Right. Yes, so I did. I voted for Blair. I voted for Blair.
God, right, I'm hanging up. See you later.
Yeah, I had that exact thing from I think Michael. I voted for him, and within, when Diana died, I was flying back from San Francisco.
I was going to San Francisco.
Oh, really?
Seriously?
Oh, wow.
I went into London. Was it the Sunday morning that
Sunday
it was
morning.
announced? And I went in to get something because I think we were flying the next day.
Were you flying Virgin by any chance?
Always Virgin.
You probably flew back on the plane that I flew in on.
Possibly Cosmic Girl or yeah. I know all those planes. I've got fucking 170,000 Virgin Air miles now to use. Yeah. Always focus on Virgins because you've got 10 left on it. Don't bother. So anyway, that morning, but obviously before internet, before Twitter or anything like that, I get up and I come into. I'm living on the Walworth Road, I think, Camberwell, and I'm going into Piccadilly to pick something up that we need to take on our first trip because the ex has finally got a passport, so we can finally travel after 3 years. And I get off at Piccadilly, Lower Regent Street, and there's two Japanese people with a camera holding up a newspaper saying Princess Diana dead. And I thought it was some Japanese joke, part of some show, which is why they're recording it at like 8:00 on a Sunday morning, so there's no one around to see it. So that was my exposure to that. And then we flew to San Francisco the next day. So I spent the entire Dianathon watching it from the other side of the world, and we must have crossed in midair.
Well, I arrived Sunday morning on a Virgin flight, and my lodger at the time had two friends who
VS008, I think VS007, VS008.
Anyway,
I used to be a proper nerd for the flight.
Well, but we arrived and they said, "Oh, hello, yeah, blah blah blah." And then they said, we spent the weekend in Islington from memory, and they said, "Oh, by the way, Princess Diana's died," and it was the first time I met them, and I was just like, I just assumed it was a bad joke, and I was like,
well likewise, the Japanese people, you think it's a sketch show.
I couldn't believe it, and then very strange. But that's really weird that you were going out to San Francisco when I was coming back. But
she was stunning. But did you ever see her?
I saw her once in Sloane Square in 1987. So she was just before she was married, I think, or was it?
Yeah, I saw her where I was at school on Nifty Road, there was a Samaritans opposite, and I must have been about 12, so it would have been about 84, 85. And she came to visit the Samaritans opposite. And obviously there was 6 deep in little old ladies, but then we were allowed out of school to go and see Lady Diana, and she was very, very elegant. She shone. She had a shine, that wasn't, it wasn't created. There was something natural about her that just...
Well, I remember seeing her from the other side of the street in Sloane Square, and she was definitely...
I've seen them all in Sloane Square, mate. Come on.
Oh, yeah. But
Tara Palmer Tompkinson, come on.
Actually, yeah, I saw... This is
poor
bizarre.
old TPT, bless her. Yeah.
Tara Palmer Tompkinson, who I used to really fancy. Rumour has it she really fancied me, but I may have dropped it. And I was
She did,
driving,
mate. She told me.
I was driving... at the time, I had a convertible Audi. So, please forgive me. So,
technique. Yeah.
I was driving in... It was around Sloane Square again. It wasn't. It was outside.
Back when Sloane Square had Sloanes, whereas now it's just full of...
Yes, I've no idea. I haven't been to London for... Yeah. I haven't been to London for so long.
But it's all full of Qataris now, so you're not missing anything.
God. Well, it was outside Harrods. So I was driving into London with Harrods on my right-hand side. We were in traffic, strangely. And I was in a convertible Audi and she was in a convertible Audi. And we were stopped in traffic and she pulled forward and she was right next to me. And she just looked... I looked at her and when you see somebody that you know, but you don't know how you know them?
Yeah.
When you sort of, your eyebrows go up and you go, oh, and then you realise, all I'm going to say about Tara Palmer Tompkinson is that she was very pretty.
TPT, sorry. Yeah, no, I thought you meant Diana.
No, not Diana, no. And she gave me a little wink in a little mischievous way, and it made my day. I thought, oh, God, you're gorgeous. But
yeah, TPT used to shop in Peter Jones on Sloane Square. She used to buy all her lady bits in there. So, right. And she had a flat around the corner.
Can you buy lady bits? Is it?
Did I?
Are you allowed to buy lady bits now? I know that we're getting very modern, but
there are. Yes, they have a dispensary and whatnot.
Right.
Apparently, yeah.
So what we've established then over 2 hours is that we are two very unknown people who've met lots of very famous people for brief periods of time.
Yeah. I had the Drogba's brother and sister live upstairs from me, so I got to meet the whole Drogba family. Chelsea. Yeah, I nearly hit Prince William. I nearly hit Prince William in the head with a chair in my local pub once as well. And he laughed, and his security guards laughed once. He realised it was a joke.
After
initially, yeah.
You nearly got.
So
shot,
but... that's why I say I'm an absolute nobody who's never had any ambition and never.
But if you live in Chelsea or around Chelsea, you're going to meet lots of.
Bob Geldof and Yasmin Khan. What was her name? Imran Khan's wife.
I have to tell you a story you've got
Danny Minogue. Danny Minogue. She used to go to my local pub all the time. Much better looking than sister. Yeah. Gorgeous. Just really down to earth. Cool girl. Yeah.
A friend of mine
clunk. Pick up those names.
Oh yeah. Well, we may as well go for it now. I'm now on my 4th whiskey, so back in the as when I was working in London the first time, late 80s, very late 80s. And a mate of mine from college was working in New Bond Street. And I was... Where was I working? I was in... Brook Street. So, one day, he's telling me a story, and he said, you're not going to guess who I met yesterday. I said, right, who? We're just out of college, so we're quite young and all the rest of it. So I'm walking home. I've just gone to buy a sandwich. I'm walking back to my office in New Bond Street. New Bond Street is important, by the way, for the story. And he said the guy walking the other way sort of raised his hand as though he was going to shake my hand and went, hello. And he said, and I knew him. I knew him. So I raised my hand and oh, hello, thinking, who the hell's this? No. And the guy behind him luckily made contact with a handshake before he had actually totally committed. And he looked at the two and he was like, I know you both, but you don't know me. Clearly, I'm in the middle of something. And he walked into his office. And I promise you, this is not bullshit. New Bond Street,
Roger Moore,
and Sean Connery meeting each other in New Bond Street.
Yeah, I know, because Roger Moore used to have a restaurant there, didn't he, as well?
Oh, did he? Oh, right.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. You know, there were great stories about Roger Moore that came out after his death. You know, like
as I always do. Yes.
When he was, like when he was on a plane and sitting in first class, and some young kid walked past him and was like, "Oh, you're James Bond, aren't you?" And he's like, "No." And then the kid had to go to the back and the economy, and so he gets off first in first class, but he waits until this kid's got off. He waits in the airport for him, or in the parking, just outside the airport. Waits to see him, and he goes, "Of course I am, but I couldn't tell you because the others might have heard." So this little 7 or 8 year old kid got away like, "Oh my God, I met James Bond." Just pretty, took the time out of his day just to have that bit of fun. And Bill really Murray is like that as well, apparently. Bill Murray walks up behind people, puts his hands over their eyes. And they're like, "Oh, what?" They turn around and he just goes, "You can tell people it was me, but they're never going to believe you." And just walks off. Which I think if you were that famous would be the kind of thing you do, right? Yeah.
I would do that. I definitely would do that. Well, before we'll bring this to an end in a minute, but I think we exchanged this story on the Gulfstream chat.
Have we got to talk about you being on stage with the Stranglers, or we got to talk about you meeting Robert Plant?
I'm glad you remembered them. Because I feel enriched now. I feel whole. Yes, my next door
walking
neighbour,
on the beaches, looking at the peaches, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When I was working for this big company I was telling you about, in a suit, I did stumble onto the stage in the basement at the Cannes, what's it called, the Royal Hotel or something, and sing Peaches with the Stranglers. I'm not sure that they definitely didn't invite me on, but they kind of worked with it.
Quite right.
So I did that, and I was probably in my 40s at the time, so that was pretty good. And then the other thing was Rob Plant, and
how did that happen?
Led Zepp. Well, Rob Plant used to live about a mile down the road from me. Of course,
because he was he's
from the Black Country.
Wolves, Wolverhampton. Wolves fan, isn't he?
Oh, well, so. But
I think the recording studio's down here somewhere.
Well,
or is it in Wales?
Possibly. Well, my two claims to fame. Basically, my dad was a builder, and my dad built the studio for Robert Plant's home. So Rob Plant had a home about a mile from us, and my dad built his studio as an extension, and my dad was a drummer.
Get a percentage, right? No royalties.
Yeah. Well, my dad, when my dad was a kid, when he was 16, he was a drummer. You can imagine it was the 50s, so it was all very, it was very into rock and roll and stuff. My dad's band were the first rock and roll band to play live in North Wales. We're really, really scraping the barrel there, but anyway, so. Rob Plant had nothing to do with that, but Rob Plant lived about a mile from me, out in the country, and I used to see him every other day on the way to prep school, when him and all his pals would be driving in light wheelbase, short wheelbase Land Rovers, driving like complete nutters through the lanes. So from the age of like 9 and 10, I used to see them, and then he'd be in the local chip shop on a Friday night. Picking up chips, so he was a local kind of celeb. A really nice.
I've heard that, and he still does quite small venues now with his kind of stripped down bands. But he used to be a member of Zeppelin are people that they are one of the very few people that I have not seen that I would really like to. Them and Radiohead as well, bizarrely, considering they went to school in Oxford at the same time that I did, and
they live in Somerset, don't they? One of them.
Well, Tommy York certainly went to Abingdon School, and they used to have to watch us. They were forced to watch the first 11 play cricket, so I suspect he's had to watch me play cricket more. I've never actually had the chance to hear him sing. And the guitarist he was about 3 months older than me, born in the same hospital. So yeah, somehow I've never actually seen Radiohead or anything from Led Zeppelin. But all the others, I've been very lucky to see Clapton many times in the Albert Hall and Cream Reunion and Guns N' Roses and lots of the blues legends as well.
That's very cool.
But yeah, cool. Led Zeppelin and Pink. My introduction to Pink Floyd was that my best friend at my boarding school, his mother did the continuity on the film for The Wall, so they got pre-release copies of the album and the video. So from a very, very young age, I was indoctrinated by Pink Floyd The Wall, which is probably my go-to album for all times, although I find it very difficult to listen to now. So there's nothing that probably makes me more angsty than that. It's quite a powerful piece of music.
When that first came out, this is how square I was as a small child. When that first came out, I actually disapproved of it. And now I look at it and just think, Jesus,
and I sat opposite of Bob Geldof, who played Pink, in my local Italian cafe before a Chelsea-Liverpool game, because he's a big Liverpool fan. And I said to him, "You're right, Pink, are you here for the game?" And he looked at me with this very bewildered, drunken Irish look, and I thought, okay, you just don't get it, mate. And off I went.
Oh, no.
I know some stories about him as well.
Well, given that I'm the broadcaster here, I think we need to be very careful what we actually say. So you're getting back to your musical background then. Because I didn't mean to cut you off, and I did, because I'm a ridiculous.
We're going on and on, but it's fine.
We're all over the place. Yeah. So, you were talking about singing and being enclosed by the choir and everything, and I had an experience. I imagined this when you were saying it. I was once in a stately home during a ball, one of these big, 3,000 people balls with fun fairs.
Judging by the size of your TV, you live in a stately home. So
no, sadly not. No, it's just a very big room in a very small house. But it was amazing, because it was my first girlfriend, in fact, who was living with a guy who owned this stately home. And long story. And at one point during the evening, while the fun fair was happening outside, and Sash, have you ever heard of Sash? And DJ, French DJ. Sasha, that's the one.
Sasha.
This is how cool I am. So he was there as the star act, and I was in the green room, and we were all told.
What year was this? Mid-90s.
This is mid-90s, probably. Yeah, we were all.
He was a superstar then.
Right. This is how much I had I wasn't in that scene at all. The bloke I knew and his girlfriend owned the fucking house. So as far as
Sasha and Digweed. John Digweed there as well?
No, I don't think so.
Sasha and Digweed used to play together. And there was those and Jeremy, superstar DJs of the mid-90s.
Well, he was at his peak, I think. And he rocked up with all his entourage. We were in the big and main house, and the main stage was like the front of the main house. So we're in the main house, only people in the main house, probably 20 of us. So we're in the main house having a drink. And suddenly a load of people came in and went, "Turn your heads away, Sash is coming through." And we went, "What? Who the fuck's Sash?" And he goes, "Turn your heads away, Sash is coming through." So I was like, I don't know what's going on, but So this little bloke walks in, and he sort of looked both sides, and there's like more people he's expecting backstage. And I purposefully looked over my right shoulder and looked at him,
quite right,
and then looked away in a totally disinterested way and took a gulp of beer, which I had obviously very carefully manufactured to a good. He meant nothing to me, but I thought, what a pompous little.
Right. So look, I'll contrast that, right, because the stuff that I played was this kind of more underground Detroit techno. And these guys, like some of these guys, like a couple of years after the originators, but they were there from the very start in the mid to late 80s. And they're playing, you were taught to them while they're playing. They were just fascinated that people were into their music. If the record was playing, you wouldn't know what it was. They hold it up and show it to you. And one of them, we did a party at Bagley's with a guy called Rob Hood, who was a very famous minimal Detroit producer, and we didn't put him in a hotel. We put him up in someone's house, and he loved it. He loved it because it's so, to be treated into someone's home. If you're from somewhere like Detroit, where everything's it's not the greatest city in the world, and for people to go, like, do you mind? He's like, no, this is absolutely brilliant. And he just was like put up in someone's bedroom, gave him keys, made him dinner, and these guys are superstars, but actual genuine originators and proper musicians, not just DJs waving their arms around. And Sasha did a bit of production, but that's so disappointing to hear. But that was at the time when they were the super clubs were in existence. You had Cream, and I wasn't into that side of the club scene. But they would play 3 nights kind of around the Midlands, going from one to another. Your Carl Cox and all those guys, and they'd get paid whatever. These days, David Guetta get like £500,000 for appearing at some corporately sponsored EDM event. And he doesn't know how to mix. He's got no idea about music. It's all pre-programmed. He's just a name and a face. And
that is amazing.
I mean, back then, what people like Healy and Cox and Sasha and Digby were getting was probably 10 grand, 20 grand, but they'd play 3 nights, and they'd be this, they'd zip around in their limousine or whatever to play in these different things. So,
well, they had a whole entourage, but it was I'd never heard of him. But,
it's not what
the reason I it was never my scene, but the reason I wanted to tell you that was because as he came on and he was doing his thing, and he did get the crowd going. I mean, there's probably 2,000 or 3,000 people, and he got them going. But this was a big stately home. It's like 30,000 square foot stately home, and we watched it for a while and was just like, well, okay. So we walked in round the corner of this stately home. They're like built in quadrangles. So we walked round the corner into the main ballroom, and there's this empty main ballroom of this place which has seen, it's a stately home. It's an incredible place. I found out later that the marble fireplace was a listed ancient monument or a listed monument or something. Anyway, like £1.5 million worth of fireplace, and we sat there in the dark. I was sat in this big chair which got all stuffing coming out of it, and there's about 12 of us in there, and there were 2 girls there, and one was a professional opera singer, and the other one was a good opera singer, but she may have been professional, but the one was quite well known, but I've no idea who she was. And they were about our age, and they sang 2 or 3 pieces together whilst Sash was doing his thing in the background, and it was one of the most chillingly amazing nights of my entire life.
So did they blend what they were singing into what you could hear coming through the walls, or was it just completely separate?
I don't think it was. What was going through the walls was quite a long. It was quite. It was in the background. They may have done, and I might not have noticed because I'm just an idiot. But what they did was they sang this beautiful, just the 2 of them singing this thing, and probably half an hour. It was just amazing. So what you were saying, sorry, it's a very long way, half an hour going back to what you were saying about being in the middle of a choir.
The power of a voice,
amazing.
I was trying to, and I still can't, and I've listened to myself back on that Gus stream, desperately trying to explain how harmonized music can be so moving, and whether it's human voice or whatever the source is, it transcends, doesn't it? And in a similar vein, when I was a student and we'd go clubbing, and we'd come back at 7 in the morning, all still buzzing, and have a smoke, and we put on an album called Ambient Dub Volume 2, which was quite a well-known, slightly cheesy, but soft, trancey, goery album of dubby stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And two of the guys who lived in the house were just absolutely brilliant guitar players. And they'd pick up their Spanish guitars and they would jam over the top of it for us. And honestly, people would have paid money to hear it. It was just phenomenal. And they've both gone on to become professional musicians and like musical therapists and work in the industry. And it's those little moments that you kind of just take for granted when you're a dumb stone 21-year-old. But
amazing. Those.
In fact, I will now trump all of that with the story that I. Right. So, God, we're boring. I'm in San Francisco.
I forgot about the recording now. We're just chatting.
I know. Yeah, no, well, exactly. I mean, that's what I've been doing the whole time. You can publish it or not. I don't care. It's about time we had a good chat. So I'm in San Francisco, and this was in the late 2000s. So when I was earning good money and free, and I go over to visit my best mate over there and his wife and the boy, and we would always go somewhere nice to catch up and discuss the world. So we'd go for dinner, and then we'd go to the Four Seasons, which had nice high back Chesterfields, and we'd get a really good brandy and a good whiskey or a bottle of champagne, and just talk about life and the world. And it was quite busy, and there'd been a big event, and I think there'd been a wedding, and Oracle do their conferences because big San Francisco thing. So there was a bunch of Oracle people there. And I think there'd been a wedding, and this beautiful 6-foot blonde from Arizona came over and saw this half bottle of Krug on the table, and was like, "Do you mind if I join you guys?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure." Grab a glass. She said, "No, I don't want a glass." And she was serving us the champagne. We were just chatting away.
That's quite cool, actually.
That was cool to start with, right? And then her friends come over. And we can hear this piano playing in the background. And her friend comes over and goes, "What are you guys doing here?" Billy Joel's next door playing. And in America, Billy Joel is like a Beatle. So
yeah. I didn't react because I was the other side of the room.
I know.
clipping a cigar. I was clipping a cigar at the other side of the room.
So her friend comes over and goes, "Yeah, Billy Joel's playing the piano." And she goes, "Yeah, okay. We'll be over in a bit." Sits there, continues chatting with us, then picks up the bottle and says, "Come on, guys, let's go check him out." And we get to the grand piano that they have in the lobby, in the bar, and there's Billy Joel taking requests with probably 30 people stood around the piano, and he sings maybe one line, and then it just lets the people sing because he's just done the 2.5-3 hour show for Oracle in Oracle Arena. Staying in the hotel, he's come into the bar, there's a piano. What does he do? He's the piano man. He sits down. Not one person took a photograph. Not one person asked for an autograph. He played for about another 2 hours. He had his lifelong buddy sitting next to him, who I had a chat with downstairs having a cigarette. And he takes him with him everywhere in the world. They've known each other since they're 14, and they've never been apart. It's just his best mate, and he just has him like a kind of a blanket, comfort blanket.
Yeah. And
I even managed to score with the 6-foot blondes and spent the night in the Four Seasons. That's my first night in the Four Seasons because I was chatting her up, drinking Krug champagne, listening to Billy Joel playing live. And he played Beatles songs, he played Christmas carols, he played whatever anybody wanted. I mean, how do you value a moment like that?
They are the moments that you remember, aren't they? I mean, I and also you said nobody took a photograph. The trouble is when you're in those scenarios, sometimes it doesn't occur to you because you're just in the moment. Other times you think, "Oh, I'd love to take a photograph of this," but you feel I can't because it would damage the moment.
This was a case of nobody even wanted to. I don't think it even crossed anybody's minds. It was just like
It's
this is
sacred almost. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like,
Well, I because we're obviously competing here to try and outdo ourselves.
this could go. This podcast could go viral as like the most obnoxious podcast in it.
Exactly. Well, my good pal Rob Plant, who has no idea who I am, he does know my godfather very well, and he used to be a member of the Stourbridge Lawn Tennis Club, and this is where I knew, I didn't know him, I knew of him, and I'd bumped into him and all the rest of it. But in the Stourbridge Lawn Tennis Club, he was a member. And one day, my godfather plays the band, and he's a reasonably well-known local musician, amongst other things. And
it's not Eric Clapton, is it? I mean, come on.
It is my godfather. And about 20 years ago, we had a New Year at the tennis club, and so we turn up at the tennis club for the New Year, and there's a disco, and then my godfather, who's my dad's age, obviously, because my dad's best mate, is playing in a band. So, I'm in my 30s, and there's some 50-odd-year-old bloke and his band playing, and it's like, well, yeah, but there is that girl there I quite fancy, so, it might not be a complete write-off. And so we're all dancing at the end, as New Year's Eve. New Year's Eves are, I hate New Year's Eve, but, as New Year's Eves are. So we're all, like, trying our best to enjoy ourselves. It's getting towards the end. I've drunk enough lager. I'm almost there. I'm kind of like, yeah, okay. And then my godfather goes, okay, so all of you who, we've got a new member who's been a member for the last 12 months, and we've persuaded him to come on stage, and he's going to do a few numbers for us. So, here we go. It's Rob Plant. I was like, what the fuck? And up he gets, and he did 3 or 4 numbers in a short set. 2 things sprung to mind. The first one was, stars are stars. I mean, he's had 30 years of experience and stuff. He command. My godfather is he's been since the 50s. He's been on stage. He's a pretty good. He's got pretty good stage command. This guy came on deck. That's my old career.
Yeah.
He came on stage. He just took this stage. There's probably 150 people in a small tennis club. And he got leather trousers and I don't know what he's wearing on his top, and he long hair obviously, and it was like being at a Led Zepp gig. He did all the stuff you want to do at 15, but are too embarrassed to do, and he just did it because he's fucking Rob Plant.
Yeah.
So, and it was amazing. It was the most amazing thing, and he did Great Balls of Fire first, obviously a cover. But he did Great Balls of Fire. He started it with, when I was in Small Heath, I'm doing the accent, when I was in Small Heath, back in the 50s or the 60s, and there was me and John Bonham, and me and John went to this party, we weren't invited, and we went in, and it was a bit quiet, this party, so John decided he's going to, really get it going. So he dropped his keks, and he poured lighter fluid all over his bollocks, and he lit fire to it, and he ran through the house, singing Great Balls of Fire. Kick it. And off he went.
Awesome.
And it was amazing. It was an amazing, 20 minutes. It was fantastic. But I think those stories, obviously you can't live your life entirely in the shadow of famous people, but I think it's quite fun, isn't it?
Definitely.
To meet
as I say,
people.
I've never had any ambition. I never wanted to travel. And then I ended up. I met some king of Bahrain or something in some.
Just might be a story.
When I was staying in the Four Seasons in San Francisco one time, and I was wearing scruffy. This is in the middle of my traveling, so I've got hair down halfway down my back, and I'm a big 6'4", 20 stone. Well, then 20 stone, now a bit more. Scruffy t-shirt. And I see these 2 blokes outside the door of one of the rooms all the time. What the fuck's going on here? And I'm waiting for the lift one time, and suddenly they leap up. I'm like, please sir, no, the king. And I'm like, what? And the door's open, and there's this stunning blonde woman and this immaculate, I don't know, Bahrainian or something, and the hotel manager and like the head of security stood behind them. The two bodyguards just not knowing what to do. And I just looked at them and smiled, and they looked at me and smiled, and they went past. And it's like, all right, that was the king of somewhere. And I asked the head waiter later, who was that? So, I can't tell you, but here's a bottle of champagne on us. And like, all right, cool. I mean, what the fuck was that? So, and, but as long as you smile and just treat people as people, they're really relieved most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they are, as you say, they are. I mean, maybe royalty's a bit different because they've always been born into it. But most people, at some point, have slept on a mate's floor or done whatever, and they quite like enjoy it from time to time.
Speaking of the musicians, because I lived next to Mumford and Sons for 3 years when they first got together as a band, and I would hear them rehearsing next door, but I was DJing next door and practicing. We had a chat, and we said, look, you make noises and I make noises, and we're not really bothered, are we? And we're like, no, cool. And I saw them when they were packing up the white van, and they did have very wealthy hedge fund manager parents. And yes, that meant that they were never desperate, but they didn't have money. They weren't handed money. And I saw how hard they worked. And Marcus, who was the lead singer, you could tell that he had this quiet that he's got more of a kind of quiet confidence, not a Robert Plant rock star thing, but the thing that he does, had that when he was younger, he does. Yeah. Like, and then when people are kind of bitter about other people's success, when they don't realize how hard, some people would fall into it through bullshit and in today's, poppy culture of X Factor and all that garbage. But even those guys have to go through hell to try and make it work, and it was quite good to see that this stuff isn't just handed. And they loved it. They loved, when Winston Marshall wrote his letter when he came back from being cancelled, and he did a big thing with Unheard, which I haven't watched yet. But he wrote that letter saying, he did quite an interesting debate with some people somewhere in Islington. But his letter saying, look, I was a musician and I worked hard, and we used to pack up the white, and I know the white van he's talking about, and they did, and they'd chuck all their stuff and then they'd vanish off for a week, and they'd play in front of 200 people, and they'd probably slept in that van or on, rented one hotel room at a travel lodge and all bundled into it. And how he was treated because he was supporting Andy Nosebag. I mean, like,
I don't understand.
What is wrong with the left that they need to? So you're saying you think Antifa are good? Okay. Yeah.
I mean, really. Andy No, even if you believe what the left believe, then Andy No has points because he's non-white, he's gay, he's got all these points that you can have if you believe of the left. If you're not of the left, what evidence is there that he's ever done anything other than report on violent demonstrations? Yeah.
And Winston Marshall then comes out and goes, I read his book and I thought it was very interesting and worth a read. And for that, to be fair, I think that band was done anyway.
Yeah.
Their last album was a vainglorious, self-indulgent monstrosity and had nothing good about it. And some of that, it's not everyone's taste. I like some of their stuff, but that album was an abysmal. And as I really hope. And Simon didn't quite get what I meant about when I mentioned this on the Gus stream about getting him and like Lawrence Fox out. And when I brought up, is it Dave Curtin, who's the Heritage Party leader?
Yeah, I really
and they thought I meant like musically, but I meant just people of that personality. That it's we are so splintered. Yeah, everyone's in. You got the Lawrence Fox doing his thing, and I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be something really big over the course of time. because he's got the backing and he's got the don't give a fuck attitude. But you need to get him and Dave, and I didn't mean musically. I meant if we're gonna have musical events where you get the musical people together, but get the political people together as well in those same arenas, and get them all working together. We need to start focusing on a common purpose, rather than having this fractured support, and working out ways that the differences could get put to the side for now, because time is too short. We're fighting a massive battle, a massive movement.
Well, the biggest problem is that most people don't know what we're fighting yet. Most people haven't got a clue.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
that really worries me. Anyway, before this, all the politics, you were telling me something about Formula One. Do you want to expand on that?
That's another story.
That is another story. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. Let's do that. My dad left around the time I was born. My parents ran off when they were about 18. My mum was supposed to go to Oxford. She would have flown through her A-levels. Super intelligent woman. 5'10" as well, which back in the 60s, I guess, would have been quite difficult.
Yeah.
So my mother had her parents, and I suspect this is many, many similar stories, had other people that they were in love with before or during the war, got together after the war and married and had my mother, and hated each other their whole lives and slept in separate rooms. And she was brought up in this dysfunctional boomer post-war environment.
Right. Had
a huge row just before her A-levels, moved into a bedsit in Maidenhead with my father when they were about 18. And they were all involved in the motor racing. Well, he was involved in the motor racing scene a bit. And my mum knew Alan Rees, who went on to set up, I think, March Ford. It all gets a bit hazy with the names because it was a long time ago and I'm not part of it. But they were all involved with Frank Williams before he was even Formula 2. My mum used to be the company secretary for Frank Williams, and my dad was one of the only engineers. It got to the 70s and he started doing Formula 2, and I'm not sure what she was doing then, but when my dad was doing Formula 2, people like Niki Lauda, James Hunt, Ronnie Peterson, Jochen Rindt, apparently they were all staying around the house. And that's my dad was the engineer when they were in Formula 2, and got to when I was born, and we didn't know this. Well, my mum didn't know that he went off with another woman, but he also went off to do Formula 1 for about 3 to 4 years, including running down the track when Ronnie Peterson crashed and died in a ball of flame, which I remember as like about a 4-year-old having to light a candle in the church and not having a clue what was going on. Anyway,
I remember him dying.
Yeah. So, yeah, they completely integrated in all of that. I never heard anything from my father. My mum tried to contact him to see if he wanted to meet up on like my 16th, 18th. Heard absolutely nothing. I eventually, the first time I saw him was on TV doing British Touring Cars Championship, and I was just happened to be watching it one Saturday afternoon, and he appeared on the screen because he used to run a team out of Edenbridge. And there was this bloke who looked like an older version of me on the TV. And I'm like, what the fuck? And so after a few years, I contacted him through some motor racing forum. And I met him when I was about 34, 35. And we had lunch. And he had no remorse at all. It was remarkable. Wow. He'd remarried, set up a big car dealership, made a load of money, had a big farmhouse, had a second son, and then lost all that in a divorce. And he's now on his third wife, but he's still got the timeshare in Antigua and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I contacted him through this motor racing forum, and I'd said, Nicky, and my username was Nicky Lauder slept in my bed. Because Nicky Lauder slept in my bedroom when I was a baby. Not with me, obviously.
That is an incredibly cool username.
Yeah. And then he's like, and so we had a bit of a chat, and he was trying to figure out if I was a weirdo, whatever. And I was like, no, let's have lunch. So we met up in the Four Seasons before it was renovated on Park Lane and had lunch. And I thought he'd be, are you okay? You know, sorry that I walked out. And he was like, no, I thought your mum would find someone else. And he said, I knew the relationship wouldn't last, so I thought it was better that I didn't form any bond with you. And I thought, all right, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
And we met up for about a year. And the day after I met him, I arranged to meet my mother and to have tea at the Dorchester, which we'd never done anything like that. Mm-hmm. And this is funny as well, because it was the day that there was like a bomb scare in the car park under Park Lane opposite the Dorchester. So we turned up at it. There's all these little old Arab blokes, all these little old ladies in Chanel, and half a dozen 6-foot blondes in bathrobes who were clearly hookers that had caught on the hop, standing outside the Dorchester because it had been evacuated because of the bomb scare. Anyway, I go in and I tell her, and I say, look, you know, I've got something to tell you. And I was like, you know, I've got in touch with my dad and I've met him. And then I managed to arrange for the three of us to have lunch at what's the restaurant at the top of the Hilton where you look out over Park Lane up there?
I know the bottom, but no, I don't know.
Yeah, and my poor mother, she was so fraught, and it took her about 2 years to get over it. But I think it really exercised a lot of demons because she'd done far more with her life than he had, even though he'd done Formula One with her legal career. But what it did for me was all my life, having been raised as a single parent, single child, I could see some of myself from my mother, but there was a whole half of me, or whatever percentage, that I didn't understand, that I thought was me, that I was doing something wrong, that I was acting this way because there was, you know, I couldn't justify it, the mistakes I was making. And I met him, and everything was like, pow, it's got nothing to do with me. It's all genetics, all these mannerisms, all these thoughts, these behaviors, these thoughts about relationships, about women, how I, you know, everything suddenly slotted into place. Yeah. The whole nature-nurture argument just became, there's the whole nature side of it. Yes, nurture has an effect on how you develop too, but it just lifted this huge amount of weight from my shoulders. So when and you know, I've never driven a car. I've never had a driving license. I've never had a test. But some reason I love watching Formula One. And I see my half-brother there. You know, I see him celebrating with Lewis Hamilton when he was at Mercedes. Or, you know, and it's very weird to feel this kind of displacement. Yeah. And now I have nothing to do with him. He phoned after about a year. I was at work, and he phoned me up during the Monaco Grand Prix, and he knew I was a big Chelsea fan. He was trying to get me to get him Chelsea tickets. He says, "Oh, I see Chelsea lost yesterday." Oh, okay, yeah. All right. He said, "What are you doing?" I'm at work. He said, "Oh, really? I'm on Johnny Herbert's boat in Monaco at the Grand Prix, drinking his champagne." Oh, well, fucking thanks a lot, mate. Well, you know,
my God.
You phone me up to tell me that Chelsea lost, and to tell me you were having a good time. I mean, okay, maybe he was just trying to reach out to make a connection. But that's how you do it. That's the last time I spoke to him. I didn't reply beyond that point to anything he sent or did. I just dropped him stone dead with no contact and blocked him. So he can live with the knowledge. And the other great thing is I look exactly like him. and my half brother looks nothing like him. Must look like his mother, and that, yeah, it's a story, right?
It's a story. I think that's the story of our discussion. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to edit it because
I don't know what you're going to do, man. Because we're now 3.5 hours in, so
I know.
I just thought we'll just talk, and if you want to publish it. If you don't want to publish anything, I won't be offended by that either, because it's just well past time that we had a good chat. So, and we both sit here on our own with fuck all to do. Isn't it amazing
that we both in this weird. I mean, I am now quite pissed. We are in this weird time. I don't think that this country has been where we are now in modern history.
In any history, because even if you go back to the invasions, and we've all watched, maybe you haven't, like Last Kingdom, and then the whole Danish invasion thing, and then the Normans coming over. But at least then we had some fight, right? At least we die on the battlefield. Now we're just like, yeah, okay, abuse us, destroy our lives, destroy our freedoms, just give us Domino's pizza and Netflix.
This is what really pisses me off. And this is probably because of my age. I do think there is something more to give your life for.
When I used to live in Chelsea, and I used to know some not far right guys, because that has those, especially when you talk about Chelsea, it has a dangerous connotation, and they're not that, but like a proper traditional Londoners, British, poppies on their lapels,
proud
the whole thing, and would and I said, look, when they came round to my flat, and we didn't get on a lot of the time, they thought I was a bit of a weirdo, but they came round to my house flat one time, and we all drank plenty of good booze and listened to music, and I let them pick the tunes. I had a bottle of Johnny Blue, and we just talked like men, rather than all the bullshit around the football and all the pettiness. And I said, look, you would die for this country on the battlefield. I wouldn't. I don't think it's worth it. I value my life more than this country. And this was back in the mid-2000s. Now, I'm the opposite. Now, I would die for, not for this country, for the I don't know, maybe they were fighting for those freedoms. I don't think they were. I think they were fighting an enemy. They didn't understand what that enemy's threat was. Yeah. It was.
I think they had
challenge.
The desire rather than this, the desire to do the right sacrifice for the right thing. And I think now it's not. Like, I mean,
now I know what the right thing is.
Yeah,
but that right thing
is
it's slightly different.
Our government. It's what our country used to.
Well, this is the problem. In the past, at least you had. I mean, and then Churchill wasn't even of the government, really, was he? He was.
Yeah, he was
an outsider in Parliament.
Churchill decided. First of all, he made a massive mistake in the First World War. When he was a young man, and hubris and all the rest of it. And he made a decision to invade Gallipoli. And when he did that, it all went wrong. Now, for whatever reason, tactical or whatever. And thousands of men died. Thousands of men from New Zealand and Australia and what have you. But the difference between him and Johnson is that it lived with him. He felt responsibility for it, and in fact, to the extent that, can you imagine this ever happening now? He was in government. He was the first admiral, and I am pissed. And he and he went back to the front line in the First World War, and fought as a frontline officer in the First World War because he felt that he had disgraced himself or whatever he felt he'd done, and he did that. Now, Johnson is just—he's
an actor. He's a thespian.
Do anything. Oh,
he learns his Greek poetry and his Latin poetry, and he sits there reciting stuff that's meaningless. He speaks in. There's nothing precise. There's nothing definite. I mean, he's the perfect politician for the age in this era of non-science and non-rationality, where it's just persona and bluster. You didn't listen to that podcast yet, did you? The Simon's last one.
I did. Yes, I did. Yeah.
Who talking about how China are trying to take over, the global oil trading index, and how currency is going to be replaced, and how much influence China has on everything. And you look at how the Five Eyes nations are the ones that are being most totalitarian. And you look at Johnson, and you look at his face, and he looks an anguished man. He looks like he's being eaten away from the inside. And JD said that he's heard that Boris he's got no control over anything. He's just completely under orders, and you kind of get that feeling. And it's like, if he could become, if he turned round and went, and people have been talking about this on a couple of podcasts, and over the course of the whole lockdown period, we've made a mistake. We're sorry. We're gonna rectify it. I can't remember what I was watching or listening to, and someone was talking about leadership, and like, if you take a troop and you walk 10 miles the wrong direction to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we walked 10 miles the wrong way." I think it was, wasn't it? Was it with the young doctor, Sam somebody or other? Yeah. That's, if he did that, he could make himself a genuine leader and a hero.
Yeah.
But he isn't, and he won't, and he can't. And so we're fucked.
I think he's a coward, and I think that
he is.
I think cowardice is the big problem that we have.
Endless children through endless women. I find that I'm not a prude. People need to have extramarital affairs. Everybody does. You can't be. I mean, unless you're very lucky, very difficult to be with one person, monogamous. But don't fuck about with children and families.
Johnson wants to be a great man. He wants to have history look at him and say, wow, he was a great man. But he has no backbone at all. I mean, he is a total coward.
He thinks this green revolution is his... well, first of all, he thinks that, they've done a cracking job with coronavirus, despite the obvious complete failure. And now he thinks that COP26 and his 10 steps green plan is going to revolutionize Britain, and we're going to lead the world in this new green revolution. It's going to destroy this country. It's going to absolutely destroy this country and put us into a second world, possibly third world, where every technology they're looking at is a reversion. We fucking moved on from windmills. You know what I mean? If you want to cut back on emissions, not that emissions actually do a goddamn thing, right? This is the main thing. The main thing is carbon dioxide is actually good for the planet. It's not bad for the planet. But even if you say it is, you don't rush headlong into destroying your infrastructure with no considered thought about how you're replacing it that's economically and technologically viable. And this is why Matt Ridley's so good, because he says you just wait 5-10 years and innovation will find ways to replace it. That makes sense.
I listened to a podcast, a professional podcast from, and I don't know if it was Delingpole or if it was somebody else, but they were talking about global warming and everything else, and they said we've got something in the UK at the moment. We've got something like 3 coal-fired power stations. That too.
Easy for me to say.
Coal-fired power stations. China has something like 1,100.
Yep.
And they're building, 30 or 40.
Another 200 odd. Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah. It's irrelevant.
If it was relevant, it would not be important.
Right. This is where it comes back to Boris Johnson, because Boris Johnson wants us to lead the way and be, and this again comes back to these, because they're destroying Australia. In Australia, they've destroyed the infrastructure earlier with these environmental projects, and it comes back to these Five Eyes nations, but Canada too, who have shut down all those oil pipelines, the rest of it.
Yeah.
It's China controlling these critical areas of espionage infrastructure, and Boris Johnson blindly toddling along, going, "Oh yeah, well, yes, okay, it won't make any difference to the world, but we can show the world that you can build it and you can make it work." It doesn't matter the fact that you're going to everyone's going to have to get a bus that's going to only be able to travel for an hour. No one will be able to afford to heat their homes or cook their meal or travel anywhere. And you'll have blackouts, and your energy bills are going to be 5 times what they are now. He thinks that we're going to be the test case for the rest of the world, and they're suddenly going to go, "Oh yeah, great." Where all they want to do is destroy our culture, watch us cripple our industries and our lifestyles, and completely dominate us, take us over, and turn us into third world countries.
It seems pretty obvious this is a con. It seems pretty obvious that whatever we do in the West doesn't matter on a global scale. And all that seems to be happening is that we are saying we are going to lay ourselves down as a first world country and become a third world country where in 20 years' time old people will be cold in their homes. Nobody will have a car. We won't have freedom of movement. We won't have freedom of speech, which is obviously here
the immigrant population that will have overrun our country will be cold in our homes.
Yeah,
because we won't be here anymore. Because we'll have been turfed out because we won't be appropriate. So our homes
we're already bad. I mean, if you
our 4-star hotels are already being toned over to immigrants, whilst our homeless and our veterans sleep in the gutter. So what will it take for another 5 million to come over to displace the council tenants?
This is it's total madness, isn't it? I mean,
it's fucked. We're fucked. This country is gone.
We are fucked.
It's fucked.
I sit. The trouble is, you see,
it's not. I don't think we should be ashamed to say it.
Forever.
I don't. And when you say the West, I don't see it in the West. I see it in this country. I don't see the German cabinet. I don't see the German cabinet full of melt the ethnicity.
Well, no, but if you
Italy
look at,
or France,
if you look at remember that video of Angela Merkel with the German flag, and she sort of like.
I don't know what kind of videos you watch. I mean, that sounds a little.
It was probably 8 years ago now. There was a video with her, and somebody brought out a German flag, and she was on stage somewhere, and they brought out a German flag. Now I kind of understand that flag waving is not very PC, but they brought out the German flag. It was a political stage, and they brought out this German flag, and she grabbed it and pushed it down and sort of like, no. So, you are whatever she is, the Prime Minister or the President or the Chancellor or whatever of Germany. Why are you hiding the German flag? There's nothing wrong with being proud of being German if you're the German fucking Chancellor. And what's wrong?
I wonder what she would have done if it had been an EU flag.
Well, exactly. Yeah. But so I just. You don't have to be a raving, sort of super right-wing racist loon to just think, well, I rather like my country, and I like the way my country used to be, and I regularly, in a provocative kind of pathetic way, share pictures of one of my favourite films, which is Genevieve, which is a 1950s film of very 1950s English people going on the London to Brighton race, and it's all very English, and it's all very well, it's just all very English. So there's a middle class barrister and his wife, and it's a jolly kind of quasi sort of romantic comedy. And you look at it and you go, yeah, nothing was perfect. There were still murderers, there were still unpleasant people, but we all shared one thing, which was that we're all English. And there might have been a class thing. It might have been that there were rich, posh people who were. I'm not sure about those people getting drunk in that pub and everything else. But we were all shared one thing. Whereas now, I mean, I haven't been to London for a long time.
Oh God, yeah. But the left now go. Oh yeah, but they were never really English because they were Saxon or Normans or Danes. So you never really English in the first place.
But that's over 1,000 years. I'm not saying we're pure. We're not pure English because we are a mongrel race. We've had Vikings, we've had Romans, we've had Danes.
As everywhere.
As has everywhere. But we had a culture, and that's the most important thing. This is where Peter Whittle on here, I don't know if you listen to Peter Whittle, I'm sure you do. But Peter Whittle, I am a massive fan of Peter Whittle because I think he's, first of all, he does it in a great way. He's very civilized and very intelligent, very reserved, and very English. But he worries about the culture, and that's where I am. I don't care what colour your skin is. I really don't give a shit.
I'll give you an example.
What I care about is culture.
So here we got a nice hotel opposite the cathedral. It's got that nice terrace. It's good to have a drink, and I spend much time there. And I like it because being in the middle of nowhere and being someone who's travelled, it's nice to be in a hotel bar because you get to meet people who are travelling and you get to hear what's going on. And this is a very white part of the world, and I tell the people who are my friends here, who've lived here for many years, you've got no idea what you're talking about with immigration. There is no immigration here. You really don't. You cannot judge it. You cannot make your political decisions based on it. But last night, along with the judge, there was also a fantastic family. And I wouldn't be able to guess what their origin was. Kind of Pakistani, Arabic. Yeah, hard to define. And they took a little girl and a little boy and a I guess probably 40-year-old husband and wife, and they'd come to the hotel and they clearly were doing a staycation, and the little girl and boy were all dressed up, all smart, nice, looking their best, and they came out of the hotel out to the terrace with their drinks in hands, and you could tell they were just felt so uncomfortable and unsure to be somewhere that was so white. And they came out and sat at the terrace, and I looked at them and I smiled, and then the kids came over and there was a cat going past, and I just started talking to the little boy, and the relief that came over especially the father, that that we're not all weird white haters out here in the Somerset.
Yeah,
it was such a weird thing because I've lived in London, so I don't think of it. And if you travelled, and I've been to places like in Macau when you're like the only white person in amongst a million Chinese faces. It was so nice to see this guy suddenly feel at ease, Yeah. And they made such an effort and they went for dinner in the restaurant, in the hotel, and there was nothing apart from just what they wanted to enjoy their holiday, and
they're just
do it in a very British way. And they may have not even been British, but they just wanted to kind of be respectful of where they were.
Respectful,
yeah,
exactly.
Exactly.
It's like, you and I have both done some travelling, and I've been to places. I went to Hong Kong, and I felt very. I was 19, and
I've got blocked from going into restaurants in Hong Kong.
Well,
they wouldn't let me in. They stood across the door. Yeah.
Well, when I was there, it was in the 80s, and Hong Kong was still a British protectorate and what have you. And I suppose there's some element of the fact it's ours or whatever, so perhaps you feel a bit more comfortable, you know. But I went there, and I had situations, as you do, because you're in a city. So I was 19. I went into a city and got charged like 85 quid for a beer, and I got chased out because I wouldn't pay for it. And
you must have done that in a Soho.
Well, at the age of 19, luckily I could run away.
You should have known better. I did it in a Soho clip joint when I was about 14.
Well, exactly. Yeah. But that's nothing to do with race or anything. But I did that. I went to Taiwan. Taiwan was different. Same time, Taiwan was different because Taiwan was kind of part of China, but not part of China. And I've been to the Caribbean. I've been to the Caribbean.
If you had the chance to go to North Korea, would you go to North Korea?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, I would too. I would too.
I'd be concerned, obviously, but I'd go if I was. Yeah, I'd go. Have you heard? Do you know Michael Malice?
No.
You need to look up Michael Malice on YouTube. Amazing guy, about the same age as me, looks about 20 years younger. He very bright guy. He wrote a book about going to North Korea, and he's basically an anarchist. And I've never been an anarchist, so I've never really understood what being an anarchist is. And it seems like
you gave up a hugely successful property development career to go sailing. I think that's anarchy, isn't it?
Well, yeah, possibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is. I hadn't thought of it like that. But anyway, you should listen to him because he's quite enjoying himself at the moment because he thinks where we're going is anarchy.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah,
I predict the August bank holiday weekend. That's my prediction.
Okay,
it's when it's going to kick off in London because it always does. You know, I lived in Woolworth for 6 years. You know, Camberwell and the Elephant and Castle, and even when the Notting Hill Carnival was on, there would still be trouble in Brockwell Park and around South London. And when there's no Notting Hill Carnival, and everyone's been cooped up, and they were going to try and go out and party, and yeah, I mean, if you see how these police have been in, you cannot continue to see these videos of police in Berlin battering little old ladies around the head with batons and then stamping on their faces before. I mean, unfortunately, there's like this big muscly guy who tries to step in, and they get 8 police around him straight away. Yeah, you need 2,000. You need 2,000 of those big muscly guys rocking up.
You know, when I saw that, I saw
with
that
crowbars,
and he jumped in. He did exactly what should have been done. He jumped in to defend them, and nobody else jumped in. Now,
that's the problem.
I don't blame them because at the end of the day, if you jump in and start lamping police officers, you're going to jail.
They're going to nick you. Yeah. Yeah. But if you've got 2,000 guys who look like him with a crowbar in their hands, those police are going to run away. Right.
Like they did during the Black Lives Matter thing. They'll run away. But isn't this what's wrong? I mean, the thing is, this is where...
But doesn't that have to happen every... I mean, we've lived in this golden age of post-war... And you know, people complain about the 70s or the 80s under Thatcher or whatever. If you're down on your luck, any particular era is going to feel like shit. Whereas some people think back at it and think they were brilliant. Yes. But we've had this kind of general period of no major war, you know, incredible technological development. We're all fat fucks because we've all got too much easy, cheap food to buy. The property boom, if you were on the right side of it.
And you look at it now, you look at that guy, that muscular guy in Germany that jumped in to try and stop the police kicking the crap out of an old woman who's like 60. And then he got overwhelmed by police because nobody else jumped in. And I was just going, jump in, for fuck's sake, jump in. But I understand why they don't. Because and the reason we don't is because we've all got something to lose. Until we don't have anything to lose, this
absolutely
will still happen.
And as you said many hours ago, when are people going to wake up to the fact that they're losing everything? That they have no idea what's going on. But I mean, we live in a state of tyranny. Well, because there's a series on Netflix. I don't know if you still have Netflix, which is well worth a watch on how to become a dictator. I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't seen it, but I've seen it there, but I haven't watched it.
Yeah, you should watch it, and you'll go, yeah, and it's basically goes through it's in 6 episodes, so each episode is kind of focuses on one of the big political figures, but it kind of focuses on all of them through each episode, but each one kind of specialized in one particular area, and it's all about controlling the media, controlling state assets, about being brutal to your enemies. I mean, you need to watch it, and you just look at it and go, holy fuck, this is exactly what they're doing. They're using our money to brainwash us with all this political messaging in the media. Who gave them the authority to spend £300 million to tell us how to think? It's absolutely staggering. And how to remove your opposition, how to it's well worth a watch. You'll fly through it in an afternoon, and that's where we're at. People don't realise we are under assault from full-blown authoritarian dictatorship that's been in the work for 45, 50 years, since the 70s when the technocrats first started, and that these guys are owned, controlled by Russia. I mean, you got to look back to when was the Hinkley C project signed off? By Amber Rudd was still the minister for DEC. I think it was under Cameron, so it was probably about 8 years ago. And they did this £80 billion deal with Russia, and 20 billion was to get Hinkley C built, and the rest of it was like healthcare stuff and military. So you got this, they were working with the Chinese back then. The Chinese are building this fucking power station. They've got the Huawei deal. They're everywhere. They're in all the people who got booted out of the civil service when Matey Boy made his first move after Brexit, and a whole load of them left. They all fucked off to high-powered executive jobs in companies in China.
Well, if you look
it's just everywhere. It's riddled. They've got fingers in all the school up the road here. About a quarter of it is Chinese kids paying $100,000 a year to come and get their education.
To come back to what we were talking about earlier, this is why it pisses me off with people with a voice, even if it's a small voice, that are unwilling to accept that it's anything other than
Toby Young. Toby Young.
I really,
Toby Young does so much. Yeah,
I really want to like. I like Toby Young.
Yeah, me
and
too.
I think he's done
pay him
fantastic.
£5 a month.
Yeah,
I pay him £5 a month.
So I pay him money, and I think he's fantastic. I think what he is doing, at least he's doing something. But I just think it's so pointless because he's playing a game which is totally controlled. I
don't understand how Delingpole puts up with those.
No, well, they're mates, aren't they? They're mates.
They are,
and
but those...
as James Delingpole says, and I think he's totally right. He doesn't really have any other mates. So at the end of the day,
I'm frustrated. I get frustrated because Toby Young. There used to be a fairly even conversation between the two of them, but Toby Young's got so used now to having a platform that he does tend to preach and broadcast, and he will ramble on for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and you can think all these points along the way that you want Delingpole to jump in and interrupt. And Delingpole is now at the point where he's like, "Okay, Tobes, how's your sponsored chair? Have you watched this? Are you going?
I'm not going to buy that chair. By the way, it's like It's £1,000 for a chair. I'm not going to pay.
You're going to get double
jab.
jabbed so you can watch Queen's Park fucking Rangers. I mean,
that drives me nuts. Hey, how would you do that if you either think that this jab might do you damage, in which case, why would you take it if somebody is going to be... if you look at how many people, just from, what's the word, anecdotal evidence. Now, I know some people have had COVID. My gardener, who is...
I had a friend who died from it. I had a friend in Dubai who died from it. So okay. I know it's out there. I know it's a bad flu.
And my gardener had it. He's
young, we both think we've had it as well.
We think we've had it. We may have had it. Hopefully we have. I would feel a lot more comfortable if I know I had it. So, especially now because I'm significantly fatter than I was at the beginning.
Yeah. So that's the other question. The people raise it and they raise it on talk radio. Why aren't they testing for antibodies? Why aren't they testing for people who may have had it? Why aren't they doing that? Should that not be one of the first things you do?
It would be the first thing you do. Or at least after you get over the panic, that's the first thing you do. Yeah. But anyway, so you look at you look at all this scenario and you think, right, okay. So if you've got Toby Young, he's taken the jab. Fine, that's up to him. He can do it if he wants to. No, he hasn't. Has he? He
hasn't yet. Not yet.
No,
not yet.
But his family have. So right. So you could, if you want to take the jab, you can take the jab. That's fine. I wouldn't take it simply because I look at. First of all, I look at the chances of me dying with it. Well, I'm 56 and I am overweight. So I went on the Oxford, the Oxford thing where you can work out what your chances are. I've got a 1 in 9,000 chance of dying of COVID. So that's kind of a lot. You think, 1 in 9,000, that's unlikely, but it's still worrying. Okay. I've got a 1 in 43 chance of having a side effect to the jab.
Yeah.
I've got a 1 in 33,000 chance of dying from the jab. So I've got a 1 in 33,000 chance of dying from something I choose to take, or I've got a 1 in 9,000 chance of dying from something I might not catch.
And that's what Dalrymple was saying when I don't know if you listened to the last one of their chats, and they're talking about how much money would you take? Would you want to take?
I heard it. Yep. Yeah,
like and it's like 5 million. He's like, and he's like, but I know this, multi-millionaire. His wife took it, and she's fucked, and the amount of money is going to get her back. So, how do you value that? Where's your risk evaluation on that? If you've got any chance of it going wrong, absolutely. Yeah.
I would rather die from something that was you caught it, and now you're going to die. Yeah.
And that's why Neil Oliver was. Neil Oliver, is that his name? Yeah. It's fantastic.
Total star.
I will catch COVID to protect your freedom. And the fucking left turned that round to say you want to give me COVID because you want to be free. It's like no.
Everything that's wrong with this country is that. Neil Oliver, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, I'm not
Prime Minister.
Not somebody who, I'm not somebody who puts people on a pedestal because nobody is perfect and all the rest of it. But Neil Oliver is as close to perfect as you can get.
Sound is the word that they used to use. Sound was the word that people. I haven't heard anybody be called sound for a very long time. Well, people used to be called sounds, but it's gone out of fashion.
James Dalrymple obviously probably uses sound more than anybody else, and he will never.
I bet he wishes he got paid by the number of times his name gets used on Twitter, on podcasts. It's like for a guy that nobody cares about, he seems to attract,
and that's great. I mean, I think I've emailed him. I live about 4 miles from Dick Dalrymple, and I don't know him.
Have you been to? So you've not been to one of the
Wednesday. I'm going to go to one.
Right. Well, when you go to one, let me know, and because I will come. And I was going to go to that one of last March, and then everybody kind of sniffed a rat with it, that it wasn't the same as the previous marches.
Yeah.
So, and I said to Simon, like, I'd much rather do a third Wednesday and take a day off work and come up and stay at a nice hotel in Worcester and meet people there where you can actually spend some time.
You can come up and stay here, but it's not a nice hotel. But you can come up and stay here.
Well, you could come and stay at the hotel, and you could then get a taxi back in the morning. We could drink whiskey until the small hours before they lock us down again. It would be really good to.
Well, we are going to get locked down again, which is I don't even want to think about it. But I met Dick Dellimpole briefly. This is a kind of a fan moment, which is kind of embarrassing. But in January 2020, after I'd come back from sailing, and I was at a loose end, and I went around Christmas time. It was just either before or after Christmas, I can't remember. And I went to a pub in Worcester. And I was in the pub with some mates, my brother and a couple of mates, and we're having a beer and on a Friday night. And I looked across the bar, and there was Dick Dellimpole. And actually, the more I think about it, I think possibly he was with Simon Roberts, but I haven't actually asked Simon whether it was him or not. And I went, oh my God, that's Dick Dellimpole. And in a kind of a fanboy kind of moment, I walked across this bar and went, excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you. And they would kind of, oh, yes. You're Dick Dellimpole, aren't you? Yes, I am. Obviously, he is, because he's pretty recognisable. Yeah. I just want to say you're doing a great job. It was just after, they used to do regular podcasts, didn't they, Dick and James. I'm totally with you. Fantastic job. Blah blah blah. Anyway, I'll leave you to it, and I walked away. And I was kind of embarrassed because I thought I made a bit of a tit of myself. But at the same time, it's kind of. I think people want to know if they're being. I think
now, if in Worcester, the whole idea is that people don't walk away embarrassed. It's let's sit down and talk and strengthen numbers. I used to email with James about, because the whole climate. So when he opened my eyes to that, I was trying to get him to send me a copy of his Watermelons book. Yeah, and I said, look, and if you're always asking for money, I'll pay over the odds. Send me a signed copy. And he's like, oh, I don't think I've got any, and I can't get hold of any.
I hope they realise that we're all allies. It must be difficult to get.
Well, this comes back to my point of we need to be bigger and look past, because we are of this side, and this side is very firm and strong in its ideology and its not necessarily arrogance, just strength of persona. And we are about individuality rather than the collectivism of the left. That it makes it very difficult to get a bunch of strong-minded people to put aside we like to challenge each other on the subtle differences, and to in good times jest and ridicule and poke and prod, but in bad times it causes just huge fissures, and we need to work on not worrying about those things. Be bigger than having flaming rows about trivia.
Well, at this point, I'm going to end the podcast.
What have you been drinking, by the way? What whiskey were you drinking?
I've drunk a hell of a lot of it. Lafroig, 10-year-old Lafroig.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
I'm feeling seriously pissed at this point. First of all, I'd like to say, London Raider, Dave, I'd like to say thank you for joining me on this particularly drunken.
Well, Sam, Mark, Box Pop, it's been good to. We've been meaning to do this for a while. I'm glad you harassed me to do it, because even if nothing comes from it, it's been really good to chat, and hopefully we'll do it face to face sometime soon.
I have to, because
there's some stuff.
It's been so long. It's been the longest by a long time, so I have to.
We didn't quite make it as long as the 6.5 hours that Simon did last Friday, but there's only two of us. They had 6 of them on there. There's only been 2 of us. So.